61. Talak Chronicle. Ruanmei waved her hand. The vines that had been tangled over the wall unknotted by themselves, revealing a recessed shelf. She pulled out a tape-like object. This was given to me by several scholars of the Recorder faction. It contains the story of the Tarok Federation as told by an advisor physician. Advisor physicians don't take responsibility for whether their prescriptions actually cure anyone, and they aren't imaginary historians who make things up for a living. But after verification by the Recorder faction, its credibility is still considered high. To read it, you'd normally need a matching device, but with your genius, you should be able to view it directly. Ino took the tape from Ruanmei. As soon as her genius interfaced with it, a flood of information poured into her. The document was titled Chronicles of Tarok. As the name implies, advisor physicians are a group who solve problems and offer prescriptions to other life forms. Being part of the Elation, they don't accept ordinary payment like credits. What they ask for are amusements. If they can be made to laugh, they will offer solutions. They are not, however, responsible for whether their prescriptions actually heal, whether they prove antidotal or toxic. This is a tale from long ago. An advisor physician was visited by representatives of Tarok 4 times. The first visitor was a prince of the Tarok Empire. By territory alone, the Tarok Empire was immense. A standard star sector is a cube 200 light-years on a side. A star field contains at least dozens of such sectors. Tarok's territory covered a full 8 star fields. For comparison, the solar system where Ino and Alicia had previously been has a diameter of under 2 light-years, a mere drop in Tarok's ocean. The prince's problem was the same one rulers across the universe always ask: how can the people's grievances be soothed? He presented a singing stone to the advisor physician, which succeeded in amusing him enough to listen. The prince spoke at length, but his complaint boiled down to one sentence. The royal family only raised taxes a little. Why are the people complaining so much? The advisor physician heard a funnier joke than the singing stone. Even with his professional restraint, he burst out laughing and replied, "It's simple. You give the money to the people." The prince froze in astonishment. Give away the realm's riches freely to the people? What a sin. With that, he left without another word. Years later, a prime minister visited the advisor physician, carrying an amethyst staff. After the prince returned, he had staged a coup, imprisoned the royal family, and transformed the state into a constitutional monarchy. Because the royal family had raised taxes during a disaster, they had lost popular support, and the prime minister quickly secured the backing of people across all 8 star fields. With the highest authority shifting from king to prime minister, how did life change for Tarok's citizens? The answer was, it got worse. The prime minister's first move was to build an inorganic army and push technology forward. Machines replaced factory labor. After surveying the empire, he concluded, collecting solar corona from stellar mines is the only value our lower-class people have. Across Tarok's 8 star fields, the corona layer temperatures ranged from hundreds of thousands to over 1,000,000 degrees. Machine parts quickly deformed in those conditions, making precise work impossible. Humans, equipped with special gear, could perform tasks machinery could not, but at the cost of drastically shortened lifespans and extraordinarily high mortality. The prime minister could not understand why, after giving the people value, they didn't thank him, but instead complained and sometimes rebelled. He asked the advisor physician how to remove popular grievance. The physician answered, technology. The prime minister found this reasoning persuasive. Back in power, he used advanced technology to conduct mass book burnings across Tarok, and traded with groups like the imaginary historians to rewrite Tarok's history, deleting any words he deemed seditious and trying to alter the populace's collective cognition. His logic was simple. If the people never learn the concepts of revolt and rebellion, they will never think to resist. The advisor physician, amused, gave an approving nod to the amethyst staff in the prime minister's retinue. My friend, you are a true genius. Years passed. A president of the newly formed Tarok Federation came to consult the advisor, carrying a ruby-encrusted scale. The prime minister and the imprisoned royal family had both been executed in the ensuing chaos, and the state had become the Tarok Federation. Did life get better under the Federation? No. When the people thought they had hit rock bottom, life pushed them deeper. The president enacted a tax code of absurd breadth. Breathing taxed, exhaling taxed, holding your breath taxed, stopping breathing taxed, tying shoelaces taxed, wearing boots taxed, wearing slippers taxed, going barefoot taxed, hammering a thumbtack taxed, swinging a hammer taxed, turning a screw taxed, doing nothing taxed too. Did this self-crowned tax immortal fear another overthrow? He did not. Instead of preventing the people from conceiving resistance as the prime minister had tried to do, he built an even more formidable inorganic fleet and ensured that control of it rested in a single individual consciousness, his own. Resistance, therefore, wasn't a matter of will, but of technology. Hundreds of millions could not defeat a single planet-scale weapon. The president's personal machine fleet rivaled the Interstellar Peace Corporation in destructive potential, though not in strategic restraint. He did not care. He was not a long-lived species. He wasn't concerned with Rupert Thur's coming. He intended to enjoy himself while alive and let posterity deal with the consequences. Then the Antimatter Legion, led by the Lord of Destruction Xing Xiao, invaded the Tarok Federation. Faced with the incursion, the people of Tarok poured into the Antimatter Legion's furnaces, voluntarily choosing to become Void Rangers. The Antimatter Legion became the war's decisive victor. Wherever they went, people welcomed them. Whole regions came alive with an energy the Legion's commanders had never seen. Recruits flocked to enlist daily. Xing Xiao grinned when she learned of it. She had never fought such a flourishing campaign. The president realized something was wrong. He took his ruby-encrusted scale to the advisor physician and begged for a way out. But because his problem resembled the prime minister's, a matter of political design rather than a solvable human grievance, the amusement-starved advisor returned the scale and refused to help. Years later, a Void Ranger came to the advisor with that same ruby scale and related the end of the story. Though the Federation's machines were powerful and the invasion did not go smoothly at first, after a while, every machine either defected on the spot or turned to molten scrap within hours. The Antimatter Legion captured Tarok without further resistance. Note, while there's no direct proof, based on our current understanding of the Lords of Destruction, we suspect Xing Xiao very likely informed another Lord of Destruction, Iron Tomb, that the Tarok Federation is a highly advanced civilization. The president and his cronies begged for mercy, but they were ground to dust by the Tarok people who had become Void Rangers. Upon hearing this, the advisor physician laughed aloud. I did not expect, in this tale, the one who treated the people of Tarok most like humans and gave them dignity was, of all beings, a Lord of Destruction. Those who come to me for prescriptions in the future, remember to follow the doctor's orders. The main body of the Chronicles of Tarok ends here. It is followed by an annotation from a scholar of the Recorder faction. The account of Tarok originally came from the oral testimony of an advisor physician. Since advisor physicians belong to the elation, their narratives may contain exaggerations or subjective alterations. Even if the physician was a direct witness, the record might be distorted. Fortunately, the actual scene of Lord of Destruction, Xing Xiao's invasion, was recorded by multiple memo keepers. Under the cooperation agreement between the Erudition Society and the Garden of Recollection, we access the images captured by the memo keepers. Other historical sources indicate the Fire Forgers were once enslaved by other races and later chose to embrace destruction. The Armed Archaeology faction and the Corporation both recovered machines that originally belonged to the Tarok Federation. Multiple appraisals determined these machines were controlled by the thought impulses of a single individual. Cross-referencing these sources confirms that during the Antimatter Legion's invasion, large numbers of Tarok citizens voluntarily became Void Rangers and that the population could not overthrow their federal government on its own. From this we infer that prior to the invasion, they lacked even basic means of survival and fundamental human dignity. Afterward, bearing the torch, illuminating the written word, I write the story of Tarok, so this vanished civilization will not be buried by time. The Recorder faction's publication has already sparked debate among scholars. Some sympathize deeply with Tarok's people, others are outraged by the actions of its rulers. After discussion, everyone agreed, Although there is no evidence linking the finality to these events, Tarok's fate was an inevitable tragedy. First, due to technological disparity, by the time of the Federation, the people had no realistic power to resist their government's outrages. Some might have hoped for an outside savior, but who could it have been? The Interstellar Peace Corporation? Its actions are almost always profit-driven. Though Tarok was vast, there was no record of urgent resources the corporation needed, nor anything tied to Klipoth. Governing Tarok would have entailed long-term expenses and little gain. From the corporation's perspective of sunk and opportunity costs, intervention was unlikely. The Xianzhou Alliance? It generally practices non-interference and, during the Federation period, was preparing for war with the Abundance Alliance. The Sea Rangers, driven by a sense of justice, might have wanted to help, but they are often stretched thin, pursued by the corporation, and engaged against Dr. Primitive and the Swarm. Many of their members are or were wanted. When Pathstriders from factions like the Stargazers, Scorched Earth Walkers, Frontline Caregivers, Arsonists, Gravediggers, Extinction Erudites, Self-Betrayers, and the Antimatter Legion bring destruction nearby, they cannot cover every front. Thus, they likely could not intervene in Tarok. Other factions' inherent natures make effective help even less probable. The Garden of Recollection would record such events and provide invaluable material, yet it would not interfere. Ensuring Tarok is remembered in records is the most the Recorder faction could do for a vanished civilization. Oppenheimer, scribe of the Recorder faction. 62. Stop Cloudino finished reading quickly, but her heart remained restless for a long time. She couldn't easily name the emotion, only a heavy sense of stagnation. It seems you have trouble expressing emotions right now, like I used to, she said finally. But that's normal. For a recently born, long-lived species, an incomplete understanding of feelings is to be expected. I didn't expect you'd be so interested in the Recorder faction's chronicles, Ruanmei replied. What interests me isn't the tale itself, but what it reveals. Life can be studied from many angles, but all researchers eventually face the same question. Where are the boundaries of life? To us, the aeons are clearly the upper limit. As for a lower limit, Tarok's story suggests there isn't one. Compared to Tarok's rulers, the Antimatter Legion may represent a higher moral standard. And the story mentions Void Rangers who can retain self-awareness. I've had some dealings with the Antimatter Legion and captured a number of Void Rangers. The best among them could show emotions beyond pure destruction, anger, sorrow, some broken phrases, but they couldn't really converse about anything outside of destruction. So you've captured Void Rangers on Bozwo Star? Eno asked. Yes, just not in this lab. You'll see them later. For now, this way. They moved on. The next area felt oddly familiar to Eno. The room layouts and textures were nearly identical to parts of the Herta space station, like recycled models. Here she finally saw ordinary people, staff who clearly belonged to Ruanmei's team, assisting with various experiments. They won't encounter the high-risk subjects, Ruanmei said at Eno's look of concern. We took a shortcut. Even though I don't oversee them directly, the staff have set up an internal clearance system. Only those who pass certain assessments are authorized to approach and maintain the high-risk experimental subjects. They use different passages when they go out. The staff paused and watched the pair as they passed, but Ruanmei ignored them. They reached an automatic door. Beyond it, Eno saw a brown-haired girl with fox ears lying in a fluid-filled chamber, tubes of various sizes threaded in and out of her body. Ruanmei gestured. Next, I need you to check her memory. In memory work, a memo keeper would be more professional, Eno said. The golden-haired man told me the fewer who know she's alive, the better, Ruanmei replied. I don't deal with memo keepers much. They could help, but it would be a long and complicated process. You are not a Pathstrider of memory, yet your skills might not be inferior. Memory is one of the most common forms of data life stores. Eno didn't refuse. She laid her hand on the device connected to one of the tubes. Through erosion, she dove into the girl's mind. A dark corridor opened. The fox-eared girl stood there, bewildered. When she saw Eno, she tilted her head. Who are you? And who am I? This path, where does it lead? Eno frowned, not because she couldn't answer, but because the girl's inner state was so damaged. If not for Ruan Mei's care, she likely wouldn't have survived. Her memories were like hundreds of tangled wires, warping her perception of herself and others. Ino's task was like untangling those dead knots without wearing any wire down. "Let's start from the beginning," she said. The scene shifted. In it, a young fox-eared girl, supported by an older fox-eared person, boarded a star skiff. She saw the sky for the first time, and brimming with excitement, stretched out a finger and quoted a line from an old commercial. "When I grow up, I want to be an astronaut, just like Aunt Yukong." The older fox-eared person smiled. The Skyfaring Commission's work isn't exactly like the astronauts in the Joyful Lad ads, but never mind, you'll understand later. For now, enjoy the flight, Tingyun. Back in the corridor, the fox-eared girl's eyes brightened. Ino breathed a little easier. Thankfully, the crucial memories are intact. She should start recognizing who she is. Tingyun's mouth opened, and after a few minutes she stammered, "Tingyun, I am. Tingyun is. It's working," Ino murmured. "I'll look for the memory fragments that matter the most next." Ruan Mei said she came from the Blazefire Mercantile Guild in Shanzhou Lufu. The chaotic threads in Tingyun's consciousness slowly lined up. Then Ino found a memory she couldn't see so much as feel, a violent psychic shock, a tearing sensation racing through her own body. It was powerful, less intense than eroding erudition, but it lasted for several minutes. This is the Lord of Destruction's imprint in her body, Ino thought, alarmed. She checked her own status. Good news, no harm, and her processing speed was unaffected. Bad news, Alicia had suddenly fallen asleep. Ino's heart lurched. She quickly checked Alicia's condition. She didn't understand why Alicia had dozed, and there was no way to wake her, but at least Alicia showed no signs of pain. Her form was stable, and there was no indication of disappearance. Ino set her worry aside for the moment and continued. After more time passed, Tingyun's eyes shone fully again. "Do you remember who you are now?" Ino asked. Tingyun hesitated, then spoke slowly. "This one is called Tingyun, an emissary of the Skyfaring Commission of Shanzhou Lufu, a representative of the Blazefire Mercantile Guild. I remember sailing out on behalf of the guild," and then she winced. Ino cut in gently. "Don't search further. The star skiff you were on was attacked by the Lord of Destruction. You were the only survivor, and were treated by Ms. Ruan Mei." "The Lord of Destruction? Ruan Mei? Are you talking about Miss Ruan Mei, the genius who was observed by the all-seeing Lord?" "She's the one." "And who are you, and where is this?" "My name is Ino. This is your shallow consciousness space. Ruan Mei entrusted me to straighten out your tangled memories. It looks like it worked." "Are you subordinate to the Aeon of Flowing Light?" "No. If I must say, I'm similar to Ruan Mei in function, though I myself am still a Nameless." Tingyun's expression relaxed. "The rainbow carriage from the Aeon of Wandering Clouds. Never mind. Regardless, I should thank you for saving my life." 63. Alarmed Miss Ino shook her head slightly. "Don't thank me yet. All I did was increase your chances of normal survival. According to Miss Ruan Mei, if you want to completely escape life-threatening danger, you have to learn to coexist with destruction. That's something only you can do." The door at the end of the corridor opened, and a slim, unfamiliar figure stood in the doorway. "My understanding of the finer points is limited," she said. "It's better to wake up first and hear Ms. Ruan Mei's diagnosis." Tingyun's consciousness returned to the room. She opened her eyes, but could not speak. The synesthetic beacon translated her thought impulses into language and sent them directly into Miss Ino and Miss Ruan Mei's minds. "My body, it feels wrong." "I'm sorry, but I can't let you fully regain consciousness yet," Ruan Mei replied telepathically. "You would be in unbearable pain. You already know you were attacked by a Lord of Destruction. Your body has been thoroughly permeated by destruction and suffered extreme damage. That kind of trauma will always follow you." "You can't remove it," Miss Ino added. "You have only two choices: die with the scars of destruction and fall into darkness, or be reborn with them." Tingyun's thought came back, simple and fearful. "So even if I wake, those life-threatening traumas stay with me? They never heal?" Ruan Mei hesitated, then explained softly, "I speak plainly because I believe everyone has the right to choose whether to come into this world. Survival is the instinct of all life. If you can be the exception, you will have my happiness at seeing it." Tingyun was silent for a moment. Then, "I understand." Destruction can mean rebirth too, Ruanmei said. If the scars the Lord of Destruction left on your body can be put to use, perhaps an unexpected evolution could occur. Ino, when you helped Tingyun sort through her memory just now, did you sense any imprint left by the Lord of Destruction? Miss Ino nodded. Yes, it was only a residual imprint of destruction, but it was personally inflicted by a Lord of Destruction. Even in Tingyun's consciousness space, the threat it posed was far greater than dealing with people possessed by the Stellaron on Jarilo 6. I also learned something valuable. From Tingyun's subconscious memory, I found why she became the sole survivor. The Lord of Destruction didn't immediately cut her life short. It did what you did, read all of her memories. Ruanmei mused. A Lord of Destruction's goal must be destruction. Everything else is a means to that end. But this particular lord seems to avoid direct annihilation the way it did with Fenfeng and Xingxiao. Why it acted like this, we can't say yet. She had barely finished when a shrill alarm blared through the corridor and hurried footsteps echoed. Ms. Eno slipped into the nearest console and quickly pulled up the situation. There's a malfunction in another lab. Something broke free from its containment. Laboratory 3. That's where the Destruction Pathstrider is stored, right? Yes. You don't sound worried, Miss Eno said. Several network lines there are damaged. I can't pull up more feeds. If whatever's in that lab gets out of control... Aren't you here with me? Ruanmei interrupted. Don't worry. The alarm means Bosuo has already sealed the relevant zones. I don't yet have the capacity to cultivate a Lord of Destruction, so they shouldn't be able to break a planet's blockade. Still, I want you to come with me, Ruanmei added. It will increase efficiency. And I want to witness and record your combat firsthand. Miss Eno inwardly rolled her eyes at the second half. She knew the invitation had more to do with observation than aid. Ruanmei treated her like an experimental subject, but also wanted to befriend her in her own blunt way. Alicia was still sleeping in the depths of Miss Eno's consciousness. Good, let her rest. I can handle Miss Ruanmei myself. At the junction between Laboratory 1 and Laboratory 3, a group of staff waited with worried faces. When they saw Ruanmei and Miss Eno, relief washed over them like a wave. An older staff member stammered, Miss Ruanmei, Miss Eno, the situation inside is complicated. Did anyone fail to get out in time? Ruanmei asked. Yes, Curtis is still in Area B, but it's not just one person. You'd better see for yourself once it's safe. Curtis? She's the staff member from the Boundary Species section in charge of Area B. Orange hair. Ruanmei nodded slowly. Oh, I remember her. It's an honor to be remembered by you, Miss Ruanmei, but it's dangerous in there. You shouldn't. Ruanmei and Miss Eno exchanged a look and walked straight up to the sealed door. Despite the older staffer's frantic protests, Ruanmei pushed it open. The moment the door swung, a centaur void ranger charged out. Watch out! Someone shouted. The creature's shadow fell over Ruanmei. It reared up on its forelegs, ready to strike. Then, without any visible wielder, a lance pierced the creature's side. Before it could bring its legs down, its form disintegrated under the erosion virus. How impressive, the older staffer breathed, recovering. With Miss Eno here, we can breathe easy. Miss Eno and Ruanmei moved through the lab. Miss Eno cleared the monsters in their path quickly and repaired damaged equipment, restoring parts of the Laboratory 3 network. The feed from Area B's monitor streamed into her mind, and she understood at once why the staff outside had been so shaken. On the screen, a beautiful orange-haired girl sat slumped beside a collapsed medicine cabinet. Curtis. 10 meters away stood another orange-haired woman beside a desk with a missing corner, identical in build and appearance to the girl crouched on the floor. The sight made Miss Eno's brows knit. 64. Uninvited. 2 Curtises? I understand. The one that broke free must be the self-betrayer. It's said they were created by a Lord of Destruction using the swarm, Ruanmei explained, so they can naturally walk both the path of destruction and the path of propagation. They replicate like the swarm, but the copies read a target's information, kill them, take their place, and use that identity to stir up conflicts within a civilization, eventually destroying it from the inside out. Ruanmei finished, and Miss Eno realized at the same time. That Lord of Destruction read Tingyun's information to use her identity to attack Shanzhou Lufu. That fits the pattern of a Lord of Destruction, but Lufu isn't undefended. The Alliance officially reveres the hunt. This won't be easy. Never mind, let's deal with the immediate problem. The two geniuses stopped theorizing and went to where the two Curtises were lying. When they arrived, both Curtises opened their eyes and looked at Ruan Mei in perfect sync. Since the self-betrayer can copy another's information, ordinary interrogation won't distinguish the real from the fake, Ruan Mei said. I'll need to read their memories and energy signatures directly. Before she could finish, one of the Curtises suddenly lunged. Its arm transformed into an insect-like proboscis and struck at Miss Eno. Because they were so close, Miss Eno couldn't both evade and strike a vital point. The erosion and the proboscis pierced one another simultaneously. Like the centaur Void Ranger before it, the self-betrayer was quickly reduced to dust under the virus's erosion. As it vanished, the wound on Miss Eno's body began visibly to heal. According to the information it had stored, Ruan Mei said, in Area B, only Miss Drag Curtis is a genuine survivor. The other people who look like staff were all replaced by self-betrayers. Curtis glanced to the side. It must have been knocked out when the medicine cabinet collapsed while it was trying to imitate me. To maintain the disguise, a self-betrayer keeps its physiological data highly similar to the person it copies until it faces a life-threatening situation or finds a new target. I didn't expect my frailty to save me at that moment. Ah, Miss, Ruan Mei, Miss Eno, I won't trouble you anymore. She started toward the door at no more than 5 kilometers per hour, the fastest she could manage. Ruan Mei, if myself is released into the atmosphere through the ventilation system, it won't do irreversible damage to Bozuo's star, will it? Ruan Mei immediately understood what Miss Eno intended and shook her head with a small smile. If it's only to disinfect this room, there's no problem. If Bozuo's star were a person, it'd be like staying in a freshly painted room for a few system hours. After Ruan Mei left, Miss Eno did another sweep. Besides Void Rangers and self-betrayers, Area B hosted dozens of other creatures following the path of destruction, or, like Afrit, professing to worship destruction. Some advocated leveling everything, some encouraged stirring up internecine fighting among the staff, some wanted to physically annihilate bodies of life, and others aimed for mental contamination. It was truly a gathering of every kind of destructive talent, young and old. Miss Eno methodically assessed them, and then acted. Soon the entire area was filled with her disinfecting toxins. She made sure every life form that worshipped destruction was wiped out. After the disinfection was complete, she returned to Laboratory 1. Thank you for all your help. I'll have everyone fully cooperate with your ongoing research, and I'll be able to repay you in the future. Repay me. Ruan Mei must mean letting her follow and record the battle just now. Miss Herta once said Ruan Mei's favor is worth more than the phase ember made by Sisselgor, although I don't really need her help right now. For the next few days, the two geniuses did nothing but study Tingyun. Miss Eno analyzed the imprint the Lord of Destruction had left on her and the destruction energy contained within, while Ruan Mei observed how that power merged with life. Then, when Miss Eno's temporary research phase ended, the Astral Express family group chat lit up and someone tagged her. Star, March 7th and the others have temporarily finished their trailblaze on Bellowbog, and there's still some time before the Penacony Orchestral Gala. We were discussing where to go next. March 7th. But who would have thought the train's network would get hacked and that woman Kafka from the Stellaron Hunters would suddenly show up? Welt, she said that about 45 system hours ago, a Stellaron erupted on Xianzhou Lufu, and the Stellaron Hunters, though not responsible, were blamed. Blade, who's a Stellaron Hunter, has already been taken by the Cloud Knights. She wants us to help bring him back and clear the Hunter's name. March 7th. Unrelated? Who would believe that? What are the odds? A Stellaron erupts and she shows up. Besides, why should we care if the Stellaron Hunters are innocent? Welt, March, that's not the point. According to Elio, the Hunter's leader, if we ignore this, half of Lufu's residents could die. Even if the predictions of the Slaves of Destiny aren't entirely reliable, the Nameless don't turn a blind eye to something like this. Star, is Xianzhou Lufu that powerful? Welt, Xianzhou Lufu is one of the 6 Xianzhou ships of the Xianzhou Alliance, one of the few factions that draw power directly from the Aeons. It's among the top-known forces in the universe. The Hunt Aeonlan isn't the most prominent, but the Alliance does have its blessing. The 6 ships support each other, sharing a common spirit. Factions that only draw power from paths can't compare. Star, more powerful than geniuses like Miss Eno and Miss Herta? Welt, the Xianzhou Alliance is more like a national-level power, while geniuses are individuals. It's not an easy comparison. With their strength and influence, geniuses are usually treated with respect by the Alliance, but, like Miss Herta's relationship with the company, the Alliance has multiple emissaries. It's not a place where geniuses can do as they please. Himeko, Miss Eno and Miss Ruanmei's research might be at a crucial point, but for something this serious, it's best to let her know. The chat ended with a vote. Miss Eno guessed that Star must have already returned to the train and simply hadn't seen the messages. Himeko and Dan Heng would stay on the train. Everyone else was heading to Lufu. A Stellaron alone might not threaten Lufu, but if a Lord of Destruction was involved, from the timing, the train should have warped to Lufu by now at the earliest. Miss Eno hesitated a moment, deleted the message she'd been about to send in the group chat, and went straight to Ruanmei. Can you lend me a ship that can warp to Xianzhou Lufu as quickly as possible? Days later, Eno returned to the surface of Bosuo Star with Ruanmei. This time they landed in a mountain hollow where a small spaceship, painted in colors that matched the rock, sat waiting. It was much smaller than the ship Ruanmei had brought before. It should meet your needs, Ruanmei said, but it's built only for speed. The ride won't be pleasant. Understood. Eno asked no more and climbed aboard, quickly activating the navigation. A teardrop-shaped object on the control panel caught her eye. Portable emergency escape device, she muttered. Switching to Dan Heng's perspective. Dan Heng woke from another nightmare, his brother with the broken, splintered sword, chasing him, hacking at him. Waking up was always the only way out. It took him a long moment to shake off the fog. When Himeko asked his opinion earlier, he had immediately declined. He still hadn't felt right. Now more steady, he went to the observation car and stared out the window. The jade gate of Xianzhou Lufu filled the view and his chest tightened. You've been standing here for half an hour, Himeko said. I rarely see you so tense. Worried about those 2 kids? Welt is there. Try not to overdo it. Himeko, you saved the Astral Express's long-range communications, right? Can I see it? Of course. When Kafka displayed Blade's image, Dan Heng's pupils narrowed. Himeko had never seen him react like that. You know him? She asked. Normally composed, Dan Heng faltered. This person, he's dangerous. If he's on the Xianzhou Lufu, everyone, Mr. Welt, March, and Star, will be in danger. He's connected to what you're trying to escape, isn't he? Yes, but I can't leave them. I only fear that my burden has finally caught up with me and will drag everyone into it. Himeko patted his shoulder. Who doesn't have burdens? Even little March, who remembers nothing, carries heavy things. We all walk a path we can't see. Everything we experience becomes our weight and the strength that keeps us moving. Dan Heng, don't overthink it, she added gently. Bang! The entire train shuddered. Dan Heng and Himeko grabbed the sofa to keep from falling, like March during a warp jump. Pom-Pom rushed in, breathless. A spaceship rear-ended the train. Before they could react further, both of their devices pinged with a private message from Eno. Dan Heng moved for the rear of the train. Thanks to Akivili engineering, the Astral Express itself was undamaged. The spaceship outside had a mangled nose but hadn't exploded and was drifting away. When the spaceship's hatch and the train's rear hatch opened, a figure leaped inside. Dan Heng didn't relax until he saw Eno. Eno was grateful that, along with gaining human perception, she had been given a sufficiently durable body. Otherwise, the collision would have hurt far worse. Ruanmei had not lied. The ship's startup, acceleration, and warp speed were multiple times faster than usual. But the trade-offs were obvious. The seats were designed against human ergonomics and were terribly uncomfortable. Worse, the ship had no braking or emergency stop system, not because of a malfunction, but because those components simply didn't exist. Eno hadn't been able to prevent the crash. Ruanmei said the ship had been a gift and she didn't know who had given it. Eno suspected that whoever offered it either bore a grudge against Ruanmei or was connected to destruction or elation. Eno, this spaceship, Dan Heng began. Never mind the ship, she cut in. I have bigger concerns. Those three are already on the Lufu, right? Yes, but there's also a very dangerous Stellaron hunter there, someone tied to me. I can't watch my friends take risks because of my own past. Ino cocked her head. Stellaron hunters? Those are bad, but manageable. What I'm worried about is someone more dangerous. Ruanmei and I think a Lord of Destruction with the ability to disguise itself is on the Lufu right now. A Lord of Destruction? Dan Heng's shock was brief. He steadied himself. No wonder you said it was serious. If it can disguise itself, how do we find it? Ino produced a device that looked like a forehead thermometer. This Lord of Destruction attacked a merchant's star skiff. One survivor was rescued by Ruanmei. Before we left, we studied the imprint that the Lord of Destruction left on that survivor and built this. It detects fluctuations of imaginary energy inside living organisms. It should be especially sensitive to destruction, this Lord in particular. Then let's hurry. Dan Heng nodded. I may have been away from the Lufu for years, but I can still be considered a local. Maybe I can help. They reached Luyun Ford. Dan Heng tried to contact the others, but messages wouldn't send. Network fault? He wondered. Ino checked Star's location. She had the same problem. It wasn't a device issue. They found fragments of armor scattered nearby. Cloud Knight remains. Those are Cloud Knight pieces, Ino said. With Mr. Welt there, it shouldn't turn into a straight-up fight with the Cloud Knights. A noise came from behind a huge cargo container. A young girl in yellow stood there, gripping a sword with both hands and awkwardly hacking at a Cloud Knight whose body had sprouted branches. Beside her stood a golden-haired man who matched Ruanmei's description. Chapter 66, Helping the Spirit Travel to Gua, a new soldier with a sword. Ino and Dan Heng noticed two people being swarmed by monsters, and the monsters noticed them in return. Dan Heng immediately drew his cloud piercer and joined the fray. One of the monsters, its body seemingly made of golden maple leaves, a gilded sigil emblazoned on its back, floated into the air. It formed a hand seal, muttered an incantation, and pointed at Ino. Because Ino was completely unguarded and made no move to dodge, a wisp of golden light streaked from the creature's fingertip and flowed into her. The creature pressed its hands together and shouted, "Explode!" The cry was loud enough to draw everyone's attention. Then, nothing. Ino blinked at the attacker, making it clear the elaborate effort did no damage. Perhaps buoyed by being off the ground, the monster assumed superiority. While the other monsters were still engaged with Dan Heng and the others, it sensed something amiss. It frantically poured its energy into an ultimate escape technique, one that seemed to follow the 36 stratagems, with escape is best as its guiding rule. But before it could vanish, erosion pierced its body and pinned it to a nearby wall. Although the other three monsters were still fighting, with Dan Heng now in the battle, victory felt inevitable. Ino didn't go back to assist Dan Heng. Instead, she stepped up to the creature pinned against the wall. "I won't tell you anything," the monster rasped. "Having our bodies pierced means nothing to those of us blessed by the merciful Medicus." "You didn't think you'd confess willingly?" Ino said, placing her right hand on its head and reading its memory directly. "On the surface, you're a medic in the Alchemy Commission, but you're actually one of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. These things you're commanding are Cloud Knights who've fallen into the Mara-struck state." Because Ino hadn't completely suppressed its agency, the creature realized she could read memories. Seizing a last chance, it drove a branch-like hand into its own chest. In the next moment, it disintegrated into a flurry of withered leaves and vanished into the air. He chose to enter Nirvana, Ino thought. Over on Dan Heng's side, the fight still hadn't truly ended. Falling into the Mara-struck state can, in some cases, be a full blooming of abundance's potential. It's not easy for normal attacks to truly kill them. Still, she should help. A Mara-struck soldier dashed at her to stop her approach to Dan Heng. Ino grabbed it. Its body collapsed and disintegrated instantly, leaving only a wisp of smoke that drifted away. With Ino joining the combat, the battle ended quickly. The young woman in yellow wiped sweat from her brow and looked at Dan Heng. "Your spear skills are pretty good. Which squad are you from?" "I'm not a Cloud Knight." "Oh, so you're a civilian. I'm Cloud Knight Sushang, just transferred here from Yaoging Xianzhou. You two are incredible, especially her." What are your names? I need to register you. My name is Dan Heng, and her name is Ino. We're not from Luofu. So you're both outsiders. My mother told me outsiders can get into serious trouble if they run into Mara-struck soldiers. But just now, with a touch, you made them disappear? Oh, and what did Ino and that guy say when they were touching the pinned one? I saw you both muttering. Sushang's familiarity made Ino pause before she answered. I used a special method to read his memory. I learned he belonged to the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. They're planning a major operation in Luofu in the coming days, but before I could learn the details, he chose to commit suicide. Disciples of Sanctus Medicus? Sushang repeated, scratching her head as if trying to place the name. I think I've heard of them, but I can't remember. The Medicus, just from the name you can tell they're tied to Yaoshi, the Aeon of Abundance, Ino explained. They worship Yaoshi and oppose the Shinzo Alliance's stance on immortality. They reject the Alliance's reverence for the hunt and lie dormant across the islands, hoping one day the whole Alliance will worship abundance. In the Xianzhou Alliance, they're considered heretics, even villains, Dan Heng added. The Stellaron crisis may even be connected to them. We should hurry and find whoever is coordinating them. If you're looking for people, come with us, Sushang said. There aren't many travelers in the Starfaring Sea right now. If your friends are alive, they'll be in a safe zone by now. Don't worry, follow me, and you'll see them when we get there. A blond man who had been thinking spoke up. Miss Sushang, aren't you going to ask my name? You already told me during the fight, Luocha. It's stuck with me. You three, stay close. Cloud Knight Sushang will make sure you stay safe. Dan Heng and Ino exchanged a look, then decided to travel with Sushang and Luocha. As they set off, Dan Heng edged closer to Luocha. Mr. Luocha, I have something to ask. Please, go ahead, Brother Dan Heng. How much do you know about the situation in Luofu? Almost nothing. I'm a traveling merchant. I was meant to board a ship and leave Luofu according to my schedule, but then I heard about an incident and the port got sealed. If what Miss Ino said is true, I'm afraid things will stay chaotic for a while. Sushang, walking ahead, glanced around and added, I heard an antimatter legion bomb was found somewhere. For safety, the whole of Luofu was sealed until the bomb is removed. I don't know if that's confirmed. Higher-ups only told us to evacuate people out of Luyun Ford. You two know each other well? Dan Heng asked. No, before you two showed up, it was Miss Sushang who rushed in, Luocha said. It's what Cloud Knights do, Sushang said matter-of-factly. We protect civilians. You're from Yaoging? Dan Heng asked. Yes, each Xianzhou operates somewhat independently, but the Cloud Knights answer to the Marshal. Troop transfers between Cloud Knights aren't unusual. Yaojing and Luofu each have their quirks. Even though I'm a Luofu Cloud Knight now, I still prefer Yaoging. For example, when it comes to leaders, I don't think General Jing Yuan is as reliable as our General Fei Xiao from Yaoging, she added, then, seeing the silence, embarrassed herself. Forget I said that. Pretend I didn't. They met no more enemies on the way. After passing through Luyun Ford and reaching the Starfaring Sea, the crowd grew, more people and more on-duty Cloud Knights gathered. Sushang patted her chest. Phew. Since you're looking for someone, why not ask around here? I'll go ask a few colleagues I know. Suddenly a commotion rose in the distance. People turned as something enormous seemed to burst from the earth and grow at impossible speed. Panic spread through the gathered crowds, voices shouting the truth. The Ambrosial Arbor. The Ambrosial Arbor has been reborn. Coffin, oh. So that faint, hard-to-see thing is Luofu's Jianmu. It's my first time seeing one. Unlike the panicked crowd, Sushang watched the wildly spreading Jianmu with genuine interest. Aren't you a Cloud Knight? Someone asked. Cloud Knights don't usually come just to look at the Jianmu, and besides, I only just arrived. Back in Yaojing, the Ambrosial Arbor has been suffering a great drought for a month. Tsk. I think ours looks prettier than Luofu's. Luocha looked surprised. I heard the Jianmu had long since withered. How can it suddenly sprout again like this? Ino, remembering what she'd seen in Belobog, felt the same shock. Can a stellar core from destruction not only spawn fragmentum, but also revive a Jianmu, something that originally comes from abundance? After a brief chat with a nearby Cloud Knight, Sushang sighed and returned to the little group. Someone took advantage of the chaos and destroyed several Jade Abacus relay stations, so you won't be able to contact your friends for now. To get you to the safe zone, we'll have to take a detour, and because of the route issues, we'll need to transfer to a star skiff partway through. Ino barely reacted. She had mostly been silent during the trip, partly because Dan Heng did most of the talking, but mostly because her attention had been on the little forehead thermometer-like device in her hand. She checked its readout again and murmured, H24I-245, H667, it looks like the Lord of Destruction isn't here. Dan Heng gave her a look. They'd agreed and were about to move, so hurry and catch up. Once aboard the star skiff, restless Sushang peered at Ino and struck up a conversation. Just now I saw you pull out a gun? That's one of my inventions. It doesn't do any real damage. You're an inventor? I suppose so. No wonder you were so quiet. You seem like the kind who can calm down and focus on research, like the masters in the Luofu Craftsman Guild. If only I could be as quiet, maybe my mother would worry less. Ah, it's precisely because I can't that I get in trouble. Luocha smiled gently. Miss Sushang, you don't have to belittle yourself. The world needs people who study in silence, like Miss Ino, and it also needs lively people like you who put things right and help others. Just now I was surrounded by those Mara-struck soldiers. If you hadn't stepped in, I probably wouldn't have lasted long enough for you two to arrive. Dan Heng shook his head. Mr. Luocha, no need to be modest. You helped a lot in the fight. For a merchant, your combat skills are impressive. Who said merchants don't face danger? The company and the Alliance protect us during interstellar travel, but once we're ashore, security is up to us. And with my mediocre skills, I wouldn't dare call myself a fighter in front of Brother Dan Heng and Miss Ino. You've got away with words, Luocha. By the way, what's in that big white box? This white box? It's a coffin, a casket, used to contain the remains of the deceased. You're carrying a body, but you're a merchant. It's part of the job. I was entrusted to deliver this coffin to Xianzhou on the way. For species that live thousands of years, death can feel far away. Not for Cloud Knights. We throw ourselves into battle. Death isn't rare. But we don't use coffins. The Xianzhou people honor their dead by enshrining names in jade abacuses in the Ten Lords Commission's Hall of Karma. And the Xianzhou aren't the only people living there. Foxians and the Vidya clan have their own rites. I once saw Foxian warriors place their fallen comrades in star skiffs and let them drift toward the stars. They call it facing Qingqiu head-on. While Sushang rambled, curiosity got the better of Ino. She aimed her device at Luocha's coffin, and the screen flashed an odd, garbled string. F. Dan Heng followed her gaze and saw Ino's change of expression. He'd been mostly listening to Sushang explain the Vidyadhara anyway. The star skiff had already put some distance behind it, and Ino tested the comms. She could send messages to Dan Heng, so signals in the area seemed normal. Dan Heng took out his own device, checked, and his face registered clear surprise. According to my readings, he said, the contents of Luocha's coffin are the remains of a worm, or possibly an even higher-level insectoid. The residual imaginary energy fluctuations inside have reached at least the propagation emissary level. Judging by the coffin's size, it looks like it holds only part of the remains. You two look like you found something important. Ino's fingers moved, and she instantly withdrew the previous message. I just realized communication tools work normally here again. Sushang immediately produced her jade abacus and contacted several Cloud Knights. It's true. Can you locate the rest of your companions? Sadly, although the two of us can communicate, we can't reach anyone else. The relay stations near where they are must have been destroyed by chance. Oh, I thought you discovered some big secret with those faces. Still, it's good news the comms are back. The star skiff dropped them in a secluded grotto. As everyone prepared to move out, they spotted a young girl trapped among Mara-struck soldiers, clearly on the verge of being killed. Ino acted without hesitation. She threw her erosion like a baton and knocked away the soldier, raising a blade for the final blow. The others rushed in, and they quickly eliminated the attackers. Are you a mechanical puppet? No wonder there was no blood, someone said. My movement mechanism is broken. I can't move. Are you Cloud Knights? Please, take me to the Everwinter Shadewalkers. the girl rasped. Ino glanced at her and then to Dan Heng. If it were merely a program error or a virus, she could fix it, but with critical components physically damaged, she was helpless. Sushang looked contrite. She is Lady Shuiyi, the mechanical puppet judge of the Ten Lords Commission. As a Cloud Knight, I should be following her orders. I shouldn't have let you follow me. If I'd gone alone, I might already be in a safe place. Luocha stepped closer to Shuiyi and crouched. I know a little medicine. Let me try to repair your injuries. It's useless. My body is crafted, not flesh and blood. Mechanical or organic, both are things that can be mended, if you don't mind my methods. Luocha produced a pendant, and a jade-green light poured from it into Sui's body. The light flowed across her damaged joints and servos, and the ruined mechanisms stitched themselves back together. The puppet's damaged movement components restored with astonishing speed. 68, act in time. Sushang rubbed her eyes, just to make sure she hadn't misread. How did you do that? This isn't a medical skill. Shui stretched and stood. Impressive. We don't need to go to the Everwinter Shadewalkers. The mission continues. As a Ten Lords Commission judge, I remain impartial. Still, since you helped me escape, I'll give one piece of advice. Leave as soon as you can. I'm here to right a wrong and apprehend a major criminal, a Stellaron hunter. He has deadly swordsmanship and wields a divine weapon. He is extremely dangerous. Dan Heng flinched. If not for some strange twist, my life might have been cut short. Are you talking about the Ambrosial Arbor's revival? Shui asked, looking off toward the horizon. The silhouette of the Ambrosial Arbor was visible from here. You all saw it too. I've never seen anything like that. The Arbor's resurgence is the work of a Stellaron. Dan Heng and Ino exchanged glances. I don't even know what a Stellaron is, Dan Heng admitted, but that sounds dangerous. The nearest functioning dock is by the Lufu Craftsman's Commission. How about we travel together? We can watch each other's backs. You don't mind, do you? Sushang asked. Since we're headed the same way, why not travel together? Luocha said. Good, they agreed. When the four arrived at the Lufu Craftsman's Commission, they found it in chaos. Sushang grabbed an apprentice and demanded, You're from the Cloud Knights? What happened here? The apprentice blurted, Ever since the Ambrosial Arbor came back, a large number of automatons and other constructs in the Commission went berserk and have taken over the dock. Oh no! A rampaging automaton locked onto the apprentice, drew a staff, and barreled forward, sending everything and everyone flying. It looked like it wouldn't stop until it had him. Sushang stepped forward and raised her sword, shielding the apprentice behind her. The clash never came. Instead, she saw the tip of a white spear meet the automaton's staff with a faint sound, and the machine froze in place. Dan Heng, calm, turned to the visibly shaken apprentice. Were only automatons and other constructs causing the dock to be inoperable? No Mara-struck soldiers or ordinary people? The apprentice nodded. The automatons attacked everything after going berserk. Those who had already been struck by the Mara-struck lost their minds and didn't run, so they became the first targets. Now, the fallen were taken by the berserk machines. Before Sushang and Luocha could ask more, they saw Ino rush through the yard. All the automatons around the commission were stopped as if frozen, just like the first one. Shui found she couldn't move her feet either. Seeing Shui standing rigid, Ino looked embarrassed and aimed erosion at her. Shui immediately returned to normal. Dan Heng stepped closer, concern in his voice. You're braver than I thought, but this... I know, Ino said. So many people saw it. My identity as a genius won't stay hidden. Maybe news of my arrival in Lufu will reach the wrong ears sooner than later. But to be able to save hundreds of lives in an instant, people I had no quarrel with, by lifting a finger, I couldn't ignore it. When she finished, Ino was surprised, not by her thoughts, but that she could say them aloud to someone other than Alicia. Then she realized why. With Alicia asleep, Dan Heng had become the person she felt closest to among the group. I and the rest of the Astral Express can't ignore this. Since the threat is serious, let's face it together. We'll help however we can. Perhaps because of her puppet body, Shui recovered from the shock first. You must explain what just happened to Xianzhou. Luocha suddenly looked thoughtful. No wonder the name Ino sounded familiar. Miss Ino, if your abilities are what I think they are you the 85th member of the Genius Society? As a merchant, I keep an eye on all kinds of information, so I'm a bit more informed. You've been observed by the all-seeing Lord? Sushang asked softly. Luocha replied. As far as I know, those observed by the all-seeing Lord all have unusual talents. If what you say is true, then what happened just now isn't so surprising. Extraordinary is an overstatement, but Lufu surely has ways to verify my identity. You have a point. General Jing Yuan will surely have a way to confirm it. The Lufu apprentices set about hauling away the stopped automatons. Thanks to Ino's timely intervention, the dock suffered no further damage and quickly returned to operation. I have a mission to finish, Shuiyi said. Now that the dock is back to normal, I must leave. The ambrosial arbor's resurgence will attract calamities. The Cloud Knights are probably at the Alchemy Commission next to the arbor. Head there. Thank you for your help and for traveling with me, Shuiyi added. I will report your good deeds to the Ten Lords Commission, and if an opportunity arises, I will repay you. Dan Heng's communicator buzzed. He had a signal. Star messaged, finally a place with a signal. You're on Lufu? Dan Heng replied, yes. Ino is with me too. She returned to the train shortly after you left. What's your situation? We captured Kafka and then went to the Divination Commission. What about Blade? He ran off. Don't know where he is. He's very dangerous. Be careful. We're heading to the Alchemy Commission next as planned. Dan Heng, if nothing goes wrong, we should meet there. The call ended, and Ino got the update at the same time. Our companions are also heading to the Alchemy Commission. Perfect. We'll see you the rest of the way. They waited for a Stardome Express and left the Lufu Craftsman's Commission. Sushang, having contacted her Cloud Knights, decided to dock at the medical market next to the Alchemy Commission. Finally, I can rejoin my squad. I didn't lie. I said I'd take you somewhere safe, and I kept my word. Though, it was a bit of a detour. Luocha's pleasant smile didn't waver. Before I left for the Stardome Sea, I consulted a diviner about this journey. She told me to follow and gain, to not worry about the destination but go with the flow, and I would gain something. Sushang didn't respond. What I mean is, thank you, Miss Sushang. Oh, all right. I'm going to report to the Cloud Knights officer here. Things haven't been peaceful lately, so please don't run off. See you again, if fate allows. After Sushang left, Luocha took his leave as well. I've already located Star, and I've roughly confirmed the Lord of Destruction's position. Do you want to come with me? Dan Heng hesitated for a moment, then shook his head. The Stellaron Hunter's moves are all written into the script of the Slave of Destiny. Elio must have calculated that we're in the Alchemy Commission right now. The Hunter Blade most wants to see is me. If I show up, he'll pursue me relentlessly. I don't have the strength to take on the Lord of Destruction yet, but at least I can make sure he or any other Stellaron Hunter won't interfere with your fight. There's an intricate connection between me and Luofu's Dragon Master. Ever since I came back, maybe this is the chance to face my past. I'll go to Scale Gorge Waterscape first. If I'm lucky, I might be able to join you later. Seeing Dan Heng's resolve, Ino said nothing more and let him go. She hurried toward Star's last known position and sent messages to the others as she moved. Not wanting to draw attention, she held back her usual flashy techniques and stuck to the traveler's path. Soon she found a large detachment of Cloud Knights blocking her way. As she approached, they stepped forward. There's an emergency ahead. The Cloud Knights have sealed it off. Please turn back. Ino organized her explanation before she spoke. My friends are inside, helping the Cloud Knights. One has gray hair, one has pink hair, and one wears glasses. Oh, you mean the outsiders. They were invited by the general. Are you with them? Hold on, let me report this. After a short while, the knight returned and motioned her through. Inside, March 7th waved, and Star looked pleasantly surprised. A polite, feminine voice filled the air, though Ino couldn't see where it came from until March 7th pointed and she leaned forward. A small pink figure stepped out from behind a barricade, a third eye set in her forehead like a tiny socket. She was trying very hard to keep her expression composed in public. Ahem, this diviner is Fu Xuan, diviner of the Divination Commission. I have been entrusted by General Jing Yuan to temporarily command the Cloud Knights. If there are any problems at Luofu right now, come to me. Within the limits allowed by alliance law, I will do my best to help you. Reports say Miss Eno eliminated the rogue disciples of Sanctus Medicus at Luyun Ford and stopped the rampaging possessed automatons in the Alchemy Commission. On behalf of Luofu, this diviner expresses gratitude. Since you're also with the Astral Express, would you be willing to join the others as General Jingyuan's surprise force and complete this mission? Eno glanced at March 7th and Star's expectant faces and immediately agreed. All right, then I'll do it. Fushuan's relieved smile softened her formal tone. That puts this diviner at ease. Opportunities on the battlefield are fleeting. The time to act is now. I will lead the Cloud Knights and finish off the followers of Sanctus Medicus myself. Fushuan swept the Cloud Knights deeper into the Alchemy Commission. March 7th looked around, then at Welt with a worried expression. So, what do we do next? General Jingyuan didn't give us any orders. We're the surprise force, Welt said. We wait until the main battle begins. First, we gather intel and observe. Oh, we have Eno here, but Dan Heng is facing that terrifying Stellaron hunter alone, and he's going to confront his past. Won't that be a problem? Don't worry, Dan Heng is strong. He's made his decision. We should trust him. With Fushuan and a large number of Cloud Knights gone, the square felt noticeably emptier. Eno noticed the figure beside her, Tingyun, and she quickly averted her eyes, then fished a small device from her pocket. Hey, Eno, what's that? A detection device. It can pick up fluctuations of imaginary energy from living things or objects within a certain range. At that moment, Star and Welt both received messages on their communicators. They checked them at the same time, then turned toward each other with matching surprise. What is that for? Eno raised the device and scanned March 7th first. The display showed nothing. It didn't detect anything. She swung the detector toward Tingyun. The screen suddenly showed a strange extra symbol and pulsed red. Oh, Fushuan's composure snapped into concern. Could this little one be afflicted with something terrible? She's very timid. She can't take fright. Then allow me to examine Miss Tingyun, Eno said. From what I heard, she helped us a lot in Luofu. I'm ashamed I didn't do more to help my benefactors, Tingyun said softly. Don't refuse, Fushuan urged. Eno is a genius. If something's wrong, you won't get another chance like this. What the benefactors say is true. I can't disappoint their kindness. This little one accepts. The distance between them closed. Eno moved in a blur, zero-frame technique, drew erosion, and plunged it through Tingyun's chest. For a moment, everything exploded outward. A colossal burst of energy radiated from Tingyun's body. Star acted on instinct, shoving March 7th down and shielding her from the blast, the force throwing the remaining Cloud Knights to the edges of the square. Tingyun's form dissolved, leaving a single golden flame hanging in the air. When the light faded, only Eno and Welt were still standing in the center. A cold, amused voice unfurled across the commission as a faint, enormous net snapped into place over the whole area. The sky had gone a ghostly green. Esteemed benefactors, the voice announced, allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Phantelia, the Lord of Destruction. I have come to make this Shanzhou collapse and self-destruct. Unexpected events yielded an even greater surprise. So that's the one who took Tingyun. Welt braced himself as a crushing pressure descended from above, pinning Star and the Cloud Knights to the ground. They struggled to rise, but the weight kept them down. March 7th was held motionless, where Star had pressed her. Everyone except Welt and Eno was utterly restrained. Welt could barely stay upright, propping himself with both hands on the simulated stars of Eden beneath him. The eerie green fire guttered and hissed. Phantelia looked at Eno, the only one who had stayed standing, and seemed almost pleased. Not bad. You haven't disappointed me. There were some unexpected twists, but it's time to accept General's invitation and make fools of ourselves on stage. Enjoy the show. The green flames drifted away, and the weight pressing on everyone eased immediately. As Stella pushed herself up, a squad of antimatter legionnaires materialized out of nowhere and began indiscriminately striking at the Nameless, the Cloud Knights, and the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. By the time the attackers were driven off, Phantelia was already gone. March 7th, still shaken, turned to Eno. So, you knew from the start that Miss Tingyun was really a Lord of Destruction? Eno shook her head slightly. Not for sure, But two things were clear. The Tingyun traveling with you wasn't the real Tingyun, and it was very likely a Lord of Destruction was already on the Luofu before the Stellaron incident. I just didn't expect her to be Fantilia's true form. Her main body isn't physical, it's something like a wubbaboo. She rifled through memory and recited crisply. Judging from what she showed, she'd belong to the spirit matter organism kingdom, astral phylum, formless order, soul essence family, what you could call the Mara-struck subspecies. In other words, Mara-struck. Biologically, she's closely related to a wubbaboo. Stella and March 7th both stared. What? Fantilia is related to a wubbaboo? She didn't even lift a finger, and everyone, except you and Uncle Yang, was wiped out. Eno shrugged. If a wubbaboo could store as much imaginary energy as Fantilia, it could become an emissary. The same applies to other life forms. If that Noblesse worm had survived after Aha gave it energy back then, I can't say if it would have become a genius, but it would have become an emissary immediately. As for the crushing pressure everyone felt just now, the mechanism might be different, but the effect is similar to Welt's. She can convert imaginary internal energy into gravitational potential, make despair itself weigh people down. Welt's brow was deep in thought. Fantilia appears in files left by other Nameless. She's one of the 7 Lords of Destruction under Nanook. She revels in mortals destroying themselves. Rather than outright annihilating people with emissary-level imaginary energy, she prefers to push them into despair, so they'll break on their own. That explains why she didn't just obliterate us right away. Eno's presence may have influenced her, but mainly she simply has no interest in destroying flesh directly. She wants to watch people collapse from realizing they can never cross the gulf before an emissary. Still, an emissary could have taken out the whole Alchemy Commission in one strike, especially with General Jingyuan absent. Fantilia could have affected the entire district easily. We should go check on the diviner. They hadn't gone far before they ran into Cloud Knights on guard. Nearby, several figures who looked like alchemists were bound and watched over, likely captured disciples of Sanctus Medicus. The Cloud Knights tensed at the approaching group, then relaxed when they recognized them. Welt asked the officer in charge, "What's happening ahead? Do you need assistance?" The antimatter legion that appeared, Diviner Fu Xuan used that chaos to strike the disciples' abominations hard, the officer replied. We seized the initiative and have the battlefield controlled now. We're encircling the abominations' leaders. We don't need help at the moment. However, Diviner Fu Huan ordered that if the situation changes and you want to go to the front, the Cloud Knights will not stop you. Just be careful. One of the captive alchemists suddenly raised his hands and cried out gibberish and prophecy. I became thunder. I became a storm. I smelled the future. Flesh and blood cannot bind me. I turned into a Xuanlu. Branches and leaves spread and covered the sky. I'll transform again. A guard sneered. We pulled several abominations from the disciples. Some of them are mad. He's the worst. Becoming one of their abominations, hurting others and yourself by those evil rites, is what they end up as. They pushed through the lines and reached the Grand Danju chamber. The disciples still fought stubbornly under the Cloud Knight's ring, but their resistance was losing ground. In the center, Stelle froze. The woman with the missing arm looked familiar. That's Dan Shu. And someone murmured. She was the chief alchemist of the Alchemy Commission. You've probably seen her before. At the front, Diviner Fu Xuan stood opposite Dan Shu, who wore despair like a shroud. Fantilia, when you gave us the Stellaron, you promised the ambrosial arbor would bring immortal bodies. The disciples of Sanctus Medicus followed your orders. So why? Why abandon us? Fu Xuan's voice was sharp. Face reality. Fantilia never cared about you or your disciples. She used you. You were tools, and under her gaze, you were always meant to self-destruct. Dan Shu laughed, bitter and broken. Ha? Sin? If what I did is sin, then the ancestors of the Xianzhou share that sin. They accepted the blessing of abundance and altered their descendants into long-life peoples. You say we're her pawns, and yet you still think the same way. Diviner Fu Xuan, with your intellect, surely you see Fantilia's real aim. Fu Xuan's face tightened as she connected the dots. The ambrosial arbor. Of course, seizing the arbor is like pulling up Luofu's roots. If she controlled the arbor, overthrowing the Xianzhou would be effortless. Dan Shu spat the rest. If the Xianzhou had renounced abundance and turned to the disciples, how would we have conspired with a lord of destruction? The ruin of Luofu comes from those who worship abundance. Dan Shu, surrender now. You abominations have nowhere to run, Fu Xuan ordered. Attack, Welt barked. Ino moved faster than anyone. In one fluid motion, she thrust erosion forward. The spear tore through Dan Shu. When Ino withdrew the blade, Dan Shu slumped to the ground, broken and sobbing, while Cloud Knight stepped in to bind her. It wasn't just her body that had given out. Fear had eaten her strength. For the brief instant, the weapon's essence pierced her. She had felt something cold and absolute, that her vaunted, abundant body could be scattered to dust in a single breath if Ino wished it. After Dan Shu was captured, the remaining disciples of Sanctus Medicus, already backed into a corner, collapsed inward, morale shattered. Fu Xuan ordered the Cloud Knights to arrest every surviving disciple who hadn't killed themselves. Phew, at last we've rounded up these villains, Fu Xuan said. But stopping Fantilia's plot is the only way for Luofu to survive. Since she's aiming for the ambrosial arbor, she's probably already reached its roots. The path there runs through the ancient sea in the Scale Gorge waterscape. As far as I know, only successive dragon sovereigns can open the ancient sea and reveal the path along the seabed, and Luofu's dragon sovereign has been lost ever since the Dan Heng Imbibitor Lunae Rebellion 700 years ago. Star stared at the vast ancient sea and blurted out, "Can't we just fly over in a star skiff?" "Not a good idea," Fu Xuan replied. "Even the smallest star skiff would be too big a target. As soon as it nears the ambrosial arbor, Fantilia would detect it. To evade the Lord of Destruction's attacks, I'm not sure even Luofu's ace pilots could pull that off." "Then what about a personal ejection device?" Ino said, producing a teardrop-shaped object. She let it fall to the floor, and a chair unfolded before her, its back bristling with propulsion units. "This is a portable emergency escape device from Ruan Mei's ship. Space-folding technology? But that still isn't solved. With Fantilia's senses, if something makes a rapid approach toward the arbor, she'll notice it. I know. If she doesn't try to intercept, I'd worry about overshooting." "You mean?" "I propose a two-step plan. The rest of you should find a way to the arbor's roots. I'll go ahead and stall her. She doesn't like to directly destroy a physical body, so I should be safer than you'd expect." March 7th's face went white. "But that's too dangerous. General Jingyuan hasn't arrived yet. Maybe he has a better strategy." "In my plan, his support is assumed. After all, only he and Fantilia are true emissaries on Luofu." "Then why not send Jingyuan?" Before Ino could answer, Welt spoke. "Exactly, because Jingyuan is the only emissary left on Luofu. He can't be risked alone. If anything happens to him, even if we repel Fantilia, Luofu will likely fracture from internal strife. That's exactly what Fantilia wants. Not to mention, it would ruin whatever plan Jingyuan already has," Fu Xuan added, irritated. "And besides, you don't even know where he is right now. We have to trust Jingyuan and wait for him to act. By the time we find and convince him, Fantilia may have already succeeded completely." According to his instructions, Fu Xuan continued, "After rounding up the disciples of Sanctus Medicus, you must follow me to the Grand Exorcism Hall in the Scale Gorge waterscape. Miss Ino's plan is extremely risky, but it's currently the most feasible option. Let's move." March 7th still looked shaken. "Then, please be careful. We'll get to you as fast as we can." I believe in you," she said, voice small. The Nameless left the Taiyan Divine Chamber with Fu Xuan and a battalion of Cloud Knights. Ino hurried to the Alchemy Commission and found a good launch point. "Why is my heart pounding? Is this nervousness?" she thought. "This is my first time going up against someone stronger than me." It felt strange. Ever since she had become a Nameless, was she truly going up against an emissary alone because she believed help would arrive in time? The answer came quickly. Yes, but not entirely. After Jarilo V6, she had learned more about the Trailblaze, but could she, as a mere passerby, risk her life for Luofu? Probably not. Among the genius, she wasn't as bad as M64 Dr. Primitive or M27 Emperor Rupert, but she didn't measure up to M22 Riel or 56 Elias Salas either. Then she found the real reason she was determined to do this. If it were Eiley, she'd do the same. I don't want to disappoint her. And Fantilia had deceived so many by posing as Tingyun. Ino's earlier suspicion had to be right. Fantelia could, to some extent, read memories like her. Since Fantelia sought spiritual self-destruction, this might be an opportunity. Ino strapped into the chair. The ejection fired. As she crossed the ambrosial arbor, a strange force yanked her in. The world went green. Fantelia's voice echoed inside her head. I wondered how you'd try to interfere with my plan. When the voice cooed. I didn't expect you'd come alone. The genius of erudition turns out to be nothing special. Still, since you've delivered yourself to me, I must treat you well. I had planned to turn that Luofu general into a Void Ranger, but now I'll try something different. The hunt has risen for 4 millennia, and Shanzou's generals have changed countless times, yet in over 2,000 Amber Eras, only 85 genius have appeared. If I could turn one of the genius into a Void Ranger, wouldn't that cause a panic across the universe? Such destruction would be entertaining. You needn't search for me. As Amara struck, I am naturally attached to your body now. Let me see. Oh, you're a virus, like the anti-organic equation. No wonder erudition studied you twice. As Amara struck, I perceive my host's emotions best. As a virus, you lead the life you parasitize toward destruction. The thing that shakes you most is the annihilation of a data space. So before you become a Void Ranger, perform a little show for me. Scenes from the past slammed into Ino. Fantelia wasn't fighting physically. She forced an immersive loop of the moments leading up to and following the deaths of the 13 flame chasers, repeatedly inserting herself into those memories and adding new, warped details. It was a mental assault, and it worked. Watching her old friends die over and over exhausted Ino's mind. Now I'm certain, she thought desperately, if Fantelia isn't an emissary, even if she's some unseen life form, she can still be eroded by me like other organic and inorganic life. In this situation, keeping myself from retaliating is very hard. I hope my guess is right. That general's play isn't over yet, Fantelia murmured within her mind. Best to dispose of her first to avoid complications. Then, suddenly, a vast tide of imaginary energy, the destructions, flooded into Ino. Just as Fantelia reached out to transform her into a Void Ranger, the imaginary energy inside Ino spiked by orders of magnitude. The surge blasted through the Mara-struck connection, hurling Fantelia out of her. A defiant, breathless voice came from Ino as she snapped free. I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. On Bozuo Star, Alicia sank into a deep sleep after Ino made contact with the Lord of Destruction's brand. Once she was sure Alicia was safe, Ino's mind turned to why she had fallen asleep at all. After considering Screwlum and Herta's analysis, she settled on a clear image. A reservoir full of water, but a tap that barely trickled. Alicia's slumber hinted at something more. After being touched by erudition, Alicia was able to persist in a relatively stable form deep in my consciousness. So Alicia's condition must be closely tied to the erudition path energy. Ino thought. If Alicia's state changed, the cause should be some sudden shift in the erudition path energy value. Evolution? Could it be? That's what happened. Returning to her tap and reservoir analogy, Ino figured the tap might be dry because there wasn't enough pressure. Under the lingering mental imprint of Fantelia, the deep imaginary energy had been squeezed upward, temporarily increasing the imaginary energy Ino could access. That surge had pushed Alicia to the threshold of evolution, but only to a threshold. More imaginary energy was needed to finish the change. If Fantelia's imprint could do this, then Fantelia's direct pressure might do even more. It was a risky hypothesis, but for Alicia, Ino was willing to try. Facing Fantelia, however, made Ino realize just how terrifying the Lord of Destruction truly was. Fantelia's effects weren't as immediately violent as Fen Feng's or Xing Xiao's, but the mental torment she inflicted made them pale in comparison. In the landscape Fantelia wove, Ino had watched, helpless, as her own hand uncontrollably drove into Galatiu's chest, a repetition of an earlier illusion in which she had destroyed a painting of Galatiu. Fantelia even placed a button nearby that pressed itself at set intervals. With each press, Ino's arm extended further, and the light in Galatiu's pupils faded. Even though Ino knew it was an illusion, the psychic damage felt painfully real. For the first time, she had the urge to explode. A conflict of parasitic wills, Mara struck clinging to the virus and the virus clinging back, left everyone's victory uncertain. As Ino mulled this, a pair of hands slipped around her waist from behind, and two bodies pressed together. Ino has done wonderfully. Now rest, okay? Leave everything else to me, a voice cooed. An unfamiliar sense of safety flooded her, and drowsiness intruded, growing stronger. Fantelia, breathing in Ino's negative emotions and planning to turn her into a Void Ranger, seemed to have the upper hand, but then she was suddenly blasted away. Time snapped back to the present. After that failed attempt, Fantelia redirected her will, injecting energy into the Xuan root of the ambrosial arbor. A woman of imposing presence materialized before Alicia. This flesh, such abundance. So this is the miracle of abundance, Fantelia said, assessing the form. Alicia's focus, however, was on the erosion in her hand. I don't seem able to corrode others the way Ino can, she mused, but that's fine. It can still serve its original purpose. This situation feels a little nostalgic. Fantelia raised a fan that was larger than a person and began fanning. Alicia stepped back out of range, then turned and struck, shattering the vines that had erupted from the ground. Genius of erudition, Fantelia drawled. I admit you use unorthodox methods, but that opportunity was wrested by Ino with everything she had. How can you call it unorthodox? Alicia shot back. Irritated, Fantelia intensified her assault. Vines burst up faster and faster, but Alicia skirted them all, her movements as graceful as a dance. Fantelia lifted her right hand and several golden lotuses drifted upward. Alicia brandished the erosion, and as imaginary energy poured into the air, a giant pink crystal flower bloomed, expanding into a dome that covered the battlefield. Pink petals became arrows that rained down with perfect accuracy, striking the immobile Fantelia and shredding the vines and lotus blossoms alike. Fantelia looked to the sky and made a decision. She drew her hand up, gathering and compressing vast imaginary energy. The pink dome shattered, and a dazzling, sun-like sphere materialized above the Scale Gorge waterscape. Charging such an object took time, but with her abundance body, Fantelia gained terrifying regenerative ability. Even the greatest damage could not interrupt her charge. This is rather troublesome, she murmured. Earlier, in the Manifesting Dragon's Great Abundance Palace, Dan Heng, still sporting dragon horns after being stabbed by blade at Scale Gorge waterscape, stood with Jing Yuan and the other members of the Astral Express. Fu Xuan had sent them nearby, then led the Cloud Knights in calming the populace and rounding up remnants of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus trying to free prisoners in the chaos. No way, Dan Heng. You really have hidden powers, someone remarked. Save the nostalgia, Dan Heng said. When you all came to Luofu claiming the Astral Express had come to handle the Stellaron disaster, Jingyuan didn't trust the Stellaron hunters' motives. I was worried back then, too. It's true the Stellaron hunters had motives, Jingyuan admitted with a wry smile. But she sent you here and stoked the conflict so you would fight alongside Shanzhou. Your sincerity now is beyond doubt. Luofu owes you gratitude, nothing more. Fantelia's appearance has blown everything out of control, another voice said. I must ask Dan Heng for his help, and I need everyone's full support. A pink crystal flower bloomed in the clouds above the ambrosial arbor. This, could it be? Someone whispered. Ino and that Fantelia have already begun fighting. We need to get there fast, Dan Heng said. The pink dome was shattered by a blinding light. What is that? Can this Lord of Destruction just seize a star with her bare hands? One of the Cloud Knights exclaimed. She may not be able to hold the sun or moon or pluck stars, but an object shaped from destruction energy and hurled down will strike with power equal to a celestial impact, another replied. We have to move even faster. General, please don't be modest. Use whatever plan you have, they urged. Jingyuan steadied himself and answered simply, no brilliant plan. Only a gamble. 73. Fierce fight. While Jingyuan and the others worked on tearing open Fantelia's shoulder, the spherical object above the ambrosial arbor grew steadily brighter. Alicia sighed softly and raised her right hand. Imaginary energy condensed there, forming a translucent bow tinged with pink. This is all I can manage for now. Oh, if only it looked prettier. Ino and I will both have to work harder, she said lightly. As the first master of the Abyss White Flower, Alicia remembered when Vilvi had given it to her. She had once wondered whether she could fire it not as a spear, but as an arrow. Of course, Doing so would have wasted the Abyss White Flower's rated power, and everyone had immediately talked her out of it. Now the lance in Alicia's hand looked very similar to the Abyss White Flower, but had no rated power and seemed to be made of a harder material. An idea struck her. She knocked Erosion onto the bow and drew back the string. Enveloped in imaginary energy, Erosion slowly took on a pink hue. Spirals appeared along its surface. As dissipated imaginary energy reconverged around her, a pink vortex formed centered on Erosion. Fantelia, seeing what looked like a "if you charge, I charge" tactic, raised her other hand and allowed a ball of flame like her main body to drift back into her. Yet as time passed, the person before her showed no signs of weakening. Strange, her willpower, why has it suddenly become much firmer? I'll wait until her stamina breaks, Fantelia thought. She snorted and threw the dazzling sphere down. Alicia released Erosion. Pink and gold collided. Crack! Erosion began to spin at high speed, boring into the sphere Fantelia had condensed. As the pink light pierced the golden core, a tremendous amount of energy burst outward. Boom! A golden mushroom cloud erupted above the ambrosial arbor's roots. The shockwave sent many cloud knights stationed at the Alchemy Commission flying. Fortunately, Xianzhou people are hardy. Crashing into trees or walls after being thrown dozens of meters caused only minor injuries. They quickly got up and continued. The ancient sea churned, towering waves rising. If Dan Heng hadn't taken control immediately, many Vididara eggs would have been swept away. When the explosion subsided, Fantelia's physical body had taken on an orange hue. Rising lotuses appeared, both golden abundance profound lotuses and blue destruction profound lotuses. Lights of various colors streamed from them, but they didn't shoot straight at Alicia. Instead, they converged into a single point and descended from the sky, engulfing her and stripping away her ability to move. A splendid struggle, but with abundance's blessing, my power is inexhaustible. How much longer can you hold on? Fantelia said as she raised her left hand and pressed down. The pressure on Alicia surged. Unable to evade, Alicia raised both hands. A pink 9-petaled flower bloomed between her palms, and 9 layers of pink barriers formed before her. Bang, bang, bang! The barriers seemed to do little. They shattered the instant they touched Fantelia's palm, like the earlier dome. In less than a minute, only 1 layer remained. Fantelia reached to seize her, meeting unexpected resistance. Futile resistance, she sneered and increased her force. Cracks spidered across the last barrier. It's time to end this. Indeed, it is about to end. My mission is complete, Alicia replied with a small smile. Fantelia felt a strange unease at that smile and pushed harder. At that moment, a great water dragon dove from the sky and severed the connection between her and the ambrosial arbor. Mighty spirit, heed my command. Slay without mercy. Jingyuan commanded. He swung the stone-light Iban, and the divine general's strike instantly shattered Fantelia's physical form. The pressure above Alicia vanished. She lowered her hands, removed the last cracked barrier, and landed in a graceful backflip. It was only a casually conjured physical body, she said dismissively. Before Fantelia could finish, the fully stacked divine general unleashed another attack. Golden lightning rained down. Though it didn't utterly annihilate Fantelia, the emissary-level strike seared her. Her screams showed she was grievously wounded. Dan Heng and Jingyuan moved to press the advantage and unleash a combo, but Fantelia suddenly split apart. Hundreds of identical fiery wisps scattered in every direction. The two cut most of them down, but a few slipped beyond their reach. Holding the last wisp of flame in his hand, Jingyuan said loudly, "Tell the Legion, the hunt's revenge will surely come." He squeezed, extinguishing the last flame. At that moment, the others arrived at Jingyuan's side. "We just got here, and it's already over? By the way, General Jingyuan, Fantelia escaped. Could she have heard what you just said?" someone asked. Jingyuan's stern expression softened. "Don't worry. Since the Emperor Bao ascended to godhood, Xianzhou has researched the Marastruck. After a relatively powerful Marastruck splits, its fragments remain briefly linked. That's how Fantelia was able to command her clones to cover her escape." Alicia looked at the group and suddenly realized something. Shouldn't I stop standing now? I'm fainting." As Alicia relinquished control of the body, Eno collapsed. Everyone rushed forward, and the nearest person, Stelly, caught her before she hit the ground. Uncle Yang, Stella's voice trembled. She has no external injuries, but since Fantelia specializes in mental attacks, Ino likely suffered severe mental trauma and has been holding on until now, Welt said, looking toward Jing Yuan. Before he could reply, Jing Yuan spoke solemnly. Rest assured, the Luofu will mobilize every resource for her treatment until Miss Ino fully recovers. I presume the Praetor has cleared the remaining dangers in the Alchemy Commission. Take her there first. I will arrange medics immediately. Who? Ino woke as if from a nightmare. When her senses returned, her breathing steadied, she realized her head was once again in Alicia's lap. Noticing she had come to, Alicia tapped her cheek with a finger. The memories from the moment Alicia took over came rushing back. Alicia, you're still as incredible as ever. Because Ino carried most of Alicia's memories, she understood the truth. Alicia may look like a harmless, beautiful girl, but she was a terrifying combatant. Among the moth-chasing flames, she was the only fusion warrior who had reached the half-step Kevin level. Qianji, who couldn't even come close to Alicia, had ripped apart the Ice Herrscher of the previous civilization before becoming a fusion warrior, and Kevin, by raw power, killing Herrschers was for him as easy as slicing melons. If the 13 flame chasers in the Elysian realm weren't just data-based memory entities, if Alicia were not the Herrscher of erosion, then even in a one-on-one fight she would be hopelessly outclassed by nearly all of them. Aside from Partophilis, she would be a weak, helpless Herrscher facing the 13. Well, I should thank Ino for that, Alicia said lightly. If you hadn't thought to use pressure to let us use more imaginary energy, I might still be asleep. So how strong are you now? Ino asked. I don't know exactly, Alicia admitted. Maybe a little stronger than the real me in the previous civilization. But you saw what happened. If Dan Heng and General Jingyuan hadn't gotten here, I would have been on the verge of collapsing too. Ino fell quiet. Then she spoke carefully. Alicia, we have to separate. You can't erode living or non-living things like I can, and I can't use your moves. We're two souls, two different people. Huh? For most of the time, you can only experience the outside world through my body. That's not fair to you. Alicia tilted her head. Even if you're a memory entity, you can exist independently in this universe. Like the Memo Keeper in the Garden of Recollection, those are meme-based life forms that have forsaken physical bodies. Why are you suddenly thinking about this? Is it because you want to do combination attacks if we were separate? Partly, Ino said. But the bigger reason is Fantelia. She wanted me to break. I keep feeling like reviving everyone is the best thing to do. She paused, heart pounding at the intensity of her feelings. Are these my feelings too strong? Why are these negative emotions coming up so intensely? Could this be the after effect of fighting Fantelia? Even though, in theory, when you finally eliminated me, all the 13 Flame Chasers' data should have merged into you, it wasn't complete, Ino went on. If I tried to resurrect the Flame Chasers using only my memories and subjective perception, it would probably be like before, mere facades without souls. It's difficult, but this universe is full of possibilities. Maybe there's a way to bring them back properly. Her voice softened. And even if it takes a very long time, I'd want you, Alicia, to travel with me. That wouldn't be a punishment. It would be a reward. Alicia's eyes widened. She helped Ino sit up, then pressed her forehead gently against Ino's. Ino, who had braced herself to say those words, immediately turned into a blushing mess. Oh my, Alicia teased. I just had a nap and you became so earnest. Did you grow up faster without me around? I'm not. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere. Alicia's tone softened. What you said earlier makes sense. If we were separate, maybe we'd experience things differently. Ino shouldn't overthink it, she continued. Remember what I said before? The curtain call in the Elysian realm closed the chapter on our past selves. You are not a sinner now. You don't need to atone or ask anyone's forgiveness. Allowing our past selves to help the present move forward is why the Elysian realm was set up. Using everything you experienced then, even the pain, as the force to push forward is exactly what we want. I understand the reasoning, Ino said, but I can't adjust my mindset that quickly. That's fine. Until you can, I'll be with you. Alicia smiled. Now let's respond to what others expect. You were unconscious for a long time. They're very worried. Ino drew a breath and gathered herself. She realized she was lying on a bed beneath an unfamiliar ceiling. As she swung her legs off the mattress, a small girl with dragon-like horns spoke in an unexpectedly mature voice. "You're awake. Looks like there's no need to call a judge from the Ten Lords' Commission to exorcise you." Did you save me?" Ino asked. The girl waved her hand. "The Alchemy Commission does handle healing, but I didn't do much. Your constitution is far stronger than the Cloud Knights. Your minor physical wounds healed before I even had time to treat them. As for the mental trauma from being possessed by the Marastruck, that's beyond my remit." Ino felt the weight of guilt pressing at her chest. If she let herself fall into that exhaustion, she would fail to follow Alicia's guidance, and she'd be playing right into Fantelia's hands. "The others, the people on the train?" she asked. "They're fine. They're currently honorary guests at the Shensei Mansion. Oh, by the way, my name is Bailu," General Jingyuan said. "You can come to me anytime you need something in the future. Skipping the queue costs extra, but we can put it on the Shensei Mansion's tab." She glanced toward the door. "Look, Miss March is here." Miss March hurried in, as though she had been waiting outside the whole time. She thrust the Mingo cake she was carrying into Bailu's hands before running to Ino. "Ino, are you all right? You really scared me when you passed out. Confronting Fantelia drained me more mentally than I expected. I'm okay now." "That's a relief," Miss March said, visibly exhaling. "General Jingyuan said he wants you to visit the Shens Mansion once you wake up. I think he wants to thank you in person." 75. Extra. Approaching the starry sky. Supreme goodness, purity, highest love and beauty. This segment is sponsored by the Interstellar Peace Corporation. Whether your world divides time into day and night or not, good morning, good noon, and good evening to you all. I'm your favorite host, Jimmy. Today we're introducing... Huh? Why are the character name, image, and bio different from what we rehearsed? Did I remember it wrong? Never mind. I'll just read through it and get off work. Ahem, in this episode of Into the Star Dome, let's take a look at the lovely and charming Miss Pink Fairy. Insert character portrait. This episode is honored to have March 7th from the Astral Express with us to introduce the character. March 7th stared at the screen, puzzled. Strange. Why does the hair on the screen look pink like mine, and her eyes are blue? Could it be... Oh. The girl understood, then froze in thought. Jimmy, noticing March 7th drifting, leaned in and whispered, "Miss March 7th. Miss March 7th. Sorry. Anyway, this Miss Pink Fairy fought the Lord of Destruction to a standstill on Luofu. Now, let's admire her elegant stance in battle. Normal attack, invitation of flowers and birds. Miss Pink Fairy is a physical-type character on the Nihility path. Her normal attack deals physical damage to a single designated enemy. Skill, Oath of Wind and Moon. Her skill deals physical damage to a single target and splash damage to adjacent foes, with a chance to inflict the laceration status. If the chosen skill target already has other continuous damage negative effects, the skill's damage is further increased. I remember, though I was far away then, I still saw the pink sky and the giant mushroom cloud. If Dan Heng and Uncle Yang hadn't stepped in, Star and I would have been blown into the ancient sea. This is the clearest demonstration of Miss Pink Fairy's strength. Even against the ferocious Lord of Destruction, she never fell behind. Ultimate, the beginning of you and me. Her ultimate deploys the flawless dome domain. When the domain appears, every unreached continuous damage stack on enemies increases by 1. While the domain exists, enemies take increased continuous damage, and all continuous damage statuses on enemies are extended to last until the domain ends. Also, our side's damage is increased. While the domain is active, when Miss Pink Fairy uses her skill, the chance to inflict laceration is greatly increased, and all current continuous damage negative statuses immediately deal damage at a fixed ratio. As Jimmy read with enthusiasm, March 7th looked at the screen, pulled out a camera, and compared details carefully. Miss Pink Fairy fights in the domain like she's dancing, but why does she seem a little different from Ino? Talent, Poem of Love and Compassion. When other characters inflict continuous damage negative statuses on enemies with normal attacks, skills, or ultimates, Miss Pink Fairy will immediately launch a follow-up attack on one of those targets. This follow-up can also inflict laceration. While the domain exists, the follow-up's damage is increased and its target changes to all enemies. After unlocking special traces, if enemies' speed is reduced or their actions delayed while the domain is active, Miss Pink Fairy will immediately use her skill again after using it that turn, without consuming skill points. Technique Blessed Land. Her technique attacks targets in front, and upon entering battle, immediately deploys the Flawless Dome domain. When the domain is deployed this way, its duration is extended by 1 extra turn. To summarize, Miss Pink Fairy is a character built around negative statuses, especially continuous damage. Now, let's see her in action in a real battle to get a clearer sense of her fighting style. Here we thank Herta Space Station for providing technical support for this program. Wait, why is there an ad in the middle of the explanation? Miss March 7th, don't rush, you'll see why in a moment. Soon the figures of Miss Pink Fairy and Ino appeared on screen together. That's right, Miss Pink Fairy's teammate is Ino, or rather, Ino's data body. Since both used their techniques before entering battle, all targets began with 1 stack of erosion. Under the Flawless Dome, we can clearly see those erosion stacks change from 1 to 2. Ino attacked first, adding another stack of erosion to all enemies. Miss Pink Fairy immediately launched her follow-up attack, then her skill. Under the amplification of 3 stacks of erosion plus the domain, all enemies lost nearly a quarter of their HP. When the enemies' turn came, they barely moved before their health was slipping away like candles in the wind. Ino struck again and finished this wave off. The second wave spawned right after. Wow, they lost so much health as soon as they appeared. This wave must be tough, but that doesn't faze them. Ino and Miss Pink Fairy used their skills as usual. During the domain, Miss Pink Fairy's follow-up could hit all eroded targets, so Ino's energy regenerated very quickly. Every time Ino attacked, Miss Pink Fairy's follow-up triggered. The two of them stepped in sync, dealing massive damage while regenerating energy fast. Soon, the enemy's erosion and laceration stacks rose, and Miss Pink Fairy's energy was full. Miss Pink Fairy used her ultimate first, refreshing the domain and increasing every monster's continuous damage stacks by 1. Ino followed with her ultimate and skill. Because the enemy's actions were delayed, Miss Pink Fairy used her skill twice in a row. When the enemies tried to act, multiple stacks of erosion and laceration combined with the Flawless Dome to produce an exhilarating combo. The enemies fell before they could even move. Battle complete. Off work done. Miss March 7th, do you have any questions? Seeing them side by side makes the difference between Ino and this Miss Pink Fairy even clearer. Could it be 2 people living in one body? Oh, Uncle Yang seems to have seen this sort of thing before. I'll ask him later. Jimmy shivered all over, a few feathers drifting down. I think I just heard something incredible. 76. Zhongshen's mansion. When Ino and March 7th stepped out of Bailu's clinic, they were met by a swarm of eyes. Compared with the reaction in Belobog, there was less shock and more admiration. Ino avoided the stares and looked at March 7th. This is mostly because of you, March 7th said. While you were unconscious at the Alchemy Commission, word spread of your fierce fight with Fantelia at the Ambrosial Arbor. Even though only General Jing Yuan and Dan Heng saw it up close, everyone could see from outside the Scale Gorge waterscape when your arrow pierced the star Fantelia hurled and the explosion that followed. It was more thrilling than any blockbuster. Oh, and earlier, at the Divine Foresight Department, you took down that Kui, the leader Dan Shu of the Disciples of Sanctus Medicus, in one go. Many Cloud Knights saw it. If you're still not used to this, we have a shortcut. March 7th steered Ino toward the Alchemy Commission's medical department, where a space anchor sat quietly in a corner. Just reach out and think of going to the Shent's mansion. March 7th touched the anchor and vanished. Ino followed, and in an instant they stood at the entrance to the Shent's mansion, March 7th at her side. The soldiers on duty, seeing them appear from thin air, rushed in to report. Before March 7th could ramble on, the soldiers returned and escorted them inside. Jing Yuan was absent. Fushuan stood by the general's main seat, while Qingzu and several strategists hustled about at high speed. They paused briefly when the newcomers arrived. Fushuan put down her work. The others only glanced before returning to their tasks. March 7th scratched her head awkwardly. Did we come at a bad time? We're counting casualties, dispatching people to pursue the remaining disciples of Sanctus Medicus, and reporting the battle to the 6 Arbiter Generals, Fushuan said. No wonder, Jingyuan said, sitting in this position is like sitting on a mountain of daggers. I'm glad to see you safe, Miss Ino. Jingyuan is probably interrogating a key prisoner at Cloudford Prison right now. The things a Luofu general should handle are temporarily my responsibility. According to his instructions, I do have important matters to discuss with everyone, she added. Coincidentally, most of you are here. March 7th, and Ino turned to see Welt, Stella, and Dan Heng, back in his energy-saving form, entering. Relief showed on all 3 faces when they saw Ino unharmed. You've all contributed greatly to the Luofu, Fushuan said. On behalf of the Luofu's official capacity, I thank you for your righteous assistance. Now that the situation has been resolved, it's time to reciprocate. Wow, are the benefits the general promised here already? Here? Here. March 7th gaped. Indeed, the Astral Express risked life and limb for the Luofu. After discussion by the 6 Arbiter Generals, effective immediately, you are sworn allies of the Luofu. Within our territory, you will receive the highest standard of preferential treatment, equivalent to allied envoys. Welt bowed slightly. On behalf of the Astral Express, I thank the diviner, he said. It sounds impressive, even if there's nothing tangible, March 7th muttered. Now that the thanks are done, I have another matter, Fushuan said. Please come with me. No way. Just finished thanking us, and now they're giving us a mission? March 7th whined. It's not exactly a mission. Fushuan sighed. I must submit an official report to Alliance High Command detailing the Stellaron disaster, the disciples of Sanctus Medicus rebellion, the revival of the Ambrosial Arbor, and even the Antimatter Legion's infiltration. But since I was involved, my view is influenced and my knowledge biased. I need you all to help sort out the timeline and clarify details. Welt looked at Ino. This operation split into 3 paths. This is a good chance to share what others don't know. Maybe we'll find clues. Mr. Welt is right, Fushuan agreed. We should start with Phantelia. Whether it was the Stellaron disaster or the Disciples' uprising, Jingyuan had planned for both, and the Luofu had the capability to handle them. What blindsided us was this Lord of Destruction. It appears Phantelia was the mastermind. The Antimatter Legion has clashed with the Alliance before, so we always keep watch. But no one expected an attack this covert. This Lord of Destruction disguised herself, infiltrated, conspired, handed the Stellaron to the disciples of Sanctus Medicus, incited rebellion, and tried to lure the Luofu into annihilation. We must reassess the Legion's threat level. Even though we have a lot of information and the logic fits, there are still gaps, she continued. How was the Stellaron brought to Shanzhou? Who sent it into the Scale Gorge waterscape? How many disciples' remnants remain? We don't know. We've done what we can, but I need your testimonies. I have one question for Miss Ino, Fushuan said. How did you first tell that the ferryman from the Skyfaring Commission was Phantelia in disguise? Before Ino could answer, March 7th jumped in. Of course, because of the gadget Ino invented. When she pointed it at Tingyun, it showed an anomaly. Welt watched Ino's face for a moment, then looked around the room and said to Fushuan, when the diviner reports, I hope she uses the explanation little March just gave. Fushuan understood the implication and waved the strategists out. If Phantelia can disguise herself, caution is necessary. Since it's just us, Miss Ino, can you tell us the full reason? Huh? Isn't that it? March 7th protested. It is, but not the whole truth, Ino said. The device confirmed that the Tingyun beside you was the Lord of Destruction, but I already suspected she was fake before that. Back when I was sharing my experiences at the Luofu with Dan Heng, I'd already met the real Tingyun at Ruanmei's place. March 7th lit up. Ino, you mean the real Miss Tingyun is still alive? Ruanmei saved her? Yes, Ino said. That's how I knew someone on the Luofu was impersonating her and rushed over. Ruanmei, another genius, March 7th murmured. This is more tangled than I thought. If Phantelia could mimic Tingyun so perfectly, she must be able to read memories. The diviner needn't worry, Ino interrupted. When I confronted Phantelia, she did check my memories, but she focused on exploiting my scars and mental pollution to push me towards self-destruction. She didn't notice that Tingyun was still alive. Chapter 77, Sorting Out and Reviewing. When Fushuan finished, everyone wore expressions of sympathy. Thank you, Miss Ino, for clearing up my doubts. I already have a plan for the Alliance's written report. Your involvement won't be omitted, especially the disturbance you caused fighting Phantelia in Scale Gorge Waterscape. That will be impossible to hide. For Jing Yuan's sake, though, I will do my best to conceal your names where the Xianzhou's internal affairs are concerned. I hope you understand. I was about to ask the diviner for the same, Ino replied. The Ambrosial Arbor's revival won't be taken lightly by the Alliance higher-ups. They will scrutinize every step. It's better to avoid trouble. If the Astral Express gets entangled in this, we might not be able to leave for a while. Indeed, Fushuan said. Jing Yuan has overstepped quite a few lines this time, and I'll have to deal with them one by one on his behalf. The Cloud Knight's generals are all difficult to handle. Let's move on to the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. To outsiders, the Alchemy Commission may look like a medical institution, but thousands of years ago, before the curse of the Dragon of Immortality, the Alchemy Commission controlled what was called the Immortal Path. But after the hunt cut down the Ambrosial Arbor and the abundance became taboo, the original Alchemy Commission declined. It kept only the function of treating illnesses and saving lives. Even then, Xianzhou natives rarely needed medical care before they fell Mara-struck. Once someone became Mara-struck, they couldn't be healed and had to be handed over to the Ten Lords Commission. Gradually, the Alchemy Commission became a department of diminishing importance. Officially, the 6 commissions are equal, but in practice, everyone knows there's a hierarchy. The Alchemy Commission is undeniably at the bottom. From that decline, the seeds of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus's rebellion were sown. Some among them even colluded with a tiger, obtaining a stellaron from the Antimatter Legion to try and revive the Ambrosial Arbor, a miracle of the abundance. They did succeed, Fushuan continued, but Phantelia's goal wasn't to help them fulfill their wishes. These traitors betrayed Xianzhou. In the eyes of the Lord of Destruction, they are merely pawns, expendable when convenient. The Luofu's, 6 Arbiter General's post for the head of the Alchemy Commission, has been vacant for a long time. The real power of the Alchemy Commission rests with Dan Shu, the head alchemist, who is in fact the leader of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus. Thanks to your help, this group has suffered heavy losses, but Dan Shu used her office to lure many followers. There are likely still remnants of the disciples of Sanctus Medicus hiding in the Luofu today. According to what Qingzu told me, Star returned safely after her stealth was exposed. With your skills, they can do little to you. But an open spear is easy to dodge. A hidden arrow is hard to guard against. I hope you'll be more vigilant when traveling through the Luofu. Thank you, Diviner, for the reminder, Ino said. Fushuan nodded and continued. Now let us speak of the Stellaron hunters who led you to the Luofu. We know as little about them as you do. Within the Matrix of Prescience, I saw the prophecy Kafka received from the Slave of Destiny. Elio foresaw several possible outcomes for the Luofu. Thinking back, Elio's warning, the Luofu may lose more than half its population, wasn't entirely an exaggeration. If Phantelia's chaos had spread the abundance unchecked, the Luofu would have suffered catastrophe. The best future Elio imagined has already come to pass. Xianzhou discovered the Legion's intent, and with your help, Phantelia was grievously wounded. So despite selfish motives, the outcome was still positive. The Matrix of Prescience can predict the future, Fushuan said. If Miss Ino is interested, when I'm less busy in a few days, come to the Divination Commission and I'll answer any questions personally. Fushuan glanced at Ino and remembered something. Oh, one more thing. Since Miss Ino is in good health, if there are no urgent matters, please visit the Luofu Craftsman's Commission. The Grand Craftsman reported that the day before yesterday, you displayed great divine power and nearly instantly subdued all the Mara-struck automatons and mechanisms. But despite their efforts, those machines cannot be reactivated. Resources across the Luofu are strained right now. If you could withdraw your divine power from those constructs, the Commission could put them to use. Also, the weapon you dropped was picked up by a patrolling Cloud Knight and handed over to the Craftsman's Commission for maintenance. Zhu Lun, the head of the commission, left for Xianzhou Juming 2 days ago for exchange and study and hasn't returned. Grand Craftsman Gongshu Liang is handling affairs in his stead. Please speak to him if you have any questions. Lastly, if you pass through the Starfaring Reef, I have something I'd like you to deliver to Helm Master Yukong. Fu Xuan produced a fan that looked familiar. Star was the first to speak. This is something Tingyun left behind? That's right, Fu Xuan confirmed. The scene was chaotic. After Fantelia manifested, Tingyun's body seemed to evaporate. The Cloud Knights only recovered the fan she carried. Based on the General's understanding of Yukong and my divination, Fu Xuan said, after you inform Yukong of the whole story and present this item, she should, by Foxian tradition, hold a memorial ceremony, in short-lived terms, a funeral. But isn't Tingyun still? Tingyun's body evaporated and turned Mara-struck in plain sight. If no funeral is held within a few days, people will begin to suspect she remains alive. Considering the current situation, Fantelia, having failed and fled in disarray, is likely to return. With her abilities, she could easily extract information about the Luofu. If we let Tingyun die in everyone's hearts, Fantelia won't learn anything from rumors of her being alive. Understood. We'll handle it, Ino said. Then I'll trouble you, Mr. Yang, Fu Xuan said, checking the remaining official duties. Let me see what else remains. It's a lot. It's getting late and I still have duties to attend to, so I won't see you off. The group left the Shensei mansion. Outside, there was a lighter air among them. I never imagined we'd stumble into being the heroes who saved the Luofu, Star said. It feels unreal, doing so many incredible things so easily. Mostly thanks to Dan Heng and Ino, someone replied. If Dan Heng couldn't have unleashed his power, and if Ino hadn't held out against Fantelia so long, even if we'd charged straight at her, we'd probably have gotten beaten. It can't be that I've got some hidden power too, right? Star echoed March 7th's teasing. Maybe when you get your memories back, you'll be able to punch Fen Feng and kick Fantelia. So she's the incarnation of a star god, huh? Another voice mused. Speaking of which, I wonder if that diviner Fu could help me. The matrix of prescience is incredibly powerful. It can enumerate Kafka's past. I kept thinking, if the matrix were used on me, could it calculate this girl's past? You truly are a little genius, Star laughed. Hey, that's right. When the diviner is free, let's go to the Divination Commission together and ask her for a favor. Seveng Shuliang. What are the others planning? Dan Heng, who had been silent, looked into the distance. I want to meet the current Vididara Dragon Elder of the Luofu. Since I can't escape the karma I created as Dan Feng, I want to understand his past more clearly. I want to see what I can do to atone for those transgressions. I see. Then how about this? March 7th and Ino go to the Luofu Craftsman's Commission, Stelle and Welt go to the Divination Commission, and Dan Heng goes to Scale Gorge Waterscape. Welt nodded. Let's arrange it that way. If there are any problems, contact us immediately. Everyone went their separate ways. March 7th, and Ino arrived at the entrance to the Luofu Craftsman's Commission and found several apprentices talking excitedly. The moment they caught sight of the newcomers, their faces lit up as if they'd seen salvation. Miss Ino, it's truly a blessing that you recovered so quickly. Master Gongshu is inside. Not far in, they saw a bespectacled man standing before an automaton, mumbling to himself. This old man has studied ingenious automatons for hundreds of years. Today I must uncover their secrets. Who's there? Master Gongshu. We're here. Miss March. Miss Ino as well. Forgive this old man's poor eyesight. Wait a moment. Gongshu Long waved his hand. The apprentices understood at once and scurried off, returning shortly with a long case. One of them opened it to reveal Ino's weapon, Erosion. She picked it up and pointed it at the sky. Electromagnetic waves radiated through the commission. Automatons and mechanisms that had remained motionless despite the artisan's best efforts sprang to life and resumed normal operation. Good. Ha! Gongshu Liang couldn't help laughing, and the apprentices beamed. If Gongshu was in a good mood, their chances of graduating successfully would rise considerably. What are you all standing around for? Do one final check, then then transport this batch of automatons and mechanisms to the various parts of the Luofu according to the previous classifications. Yes. The Luofu Craftsman's Commission buzzed with activity. Gong Long stared at Erosion for a long time before finally asking, Miss Ino, if I may be so bold, could you tell me where this weapon came from? Ino scratched her head. The company, specifically Pierpoint. So that's it, as expected of one of the three great forging centers of the universe, a place whose forging standards rival those of Zhuming Xianzhou. It truly lives up to its reputation. Three great centers? What's the other one? March 7th asked. The last is Screwlum, entirely governed by automatons and mechanisms. Screwlum? Isn't that Screwlum's territory? You know them. Yes, you travel widely like the roaming cloud sovereigns, and you're always willing to help others, so you must have many acquaintances across the universe. Besides, both Miss Ino and the monarch of Screwlum have caught the attention of the all-seeing lord, so it's only natural you'd know each other. In this old man's opinion, Gongshu continued after a pause, since Miss Ino's weapon remained undamaged under the Lord of Destruction's attack, it likely utilizes an item the company once offered the sky-mending diviners for repairing the sky. But from my observations, although Miss Ino's weapon is excellent, its internal structure is not excessively complex. March 7th was surprised. You took it apart to look inside? Alas, Gongshu shook his head. A weapon that even a Lord of Destruction cannot destroy. How could this old man possess the ability to take it apart? To understand an artifact's structure, one does not necessarily need to see it with one's own eyes. We, in this line of work, have other means of perception. So, if there's no profound mystery in its structure, how did a mere wave of your hand get control over so many automatons and mechanisms? March 7th pressed. This, Gongshu hesitated. Forgive the old man's bluntness if this touches on secrets. It's not really a secret. The answer is simply a virus. A virus? March 7th echoed. The Luofu surely doesn't still not know why Ino became a genius, do they? Of course we know. It was by deciphering the anti-organic equation left by Emperor Rupert. Although compared to the company, the Xianzhou Alliance's time voyaging the star seas has been short, and they didn't experience those two terrible Emperor Wars. However, the two automaton rebellions thousands of years ago, especially the Second Emperor War during the Life Tribulation period, still haunt the Alliance. When we investigated the causes afterward, the greatest possibility was that they were influenced by the aftershocks of the Second Emperor War. Ever since the automaton leader Jije was slain on Yaojing, the Xianzhou Alliance, like the company, has been extremely cautious regarding automatons and mechanisms. Laws even stipulate that the Luofu Craftsman's Commission must not allow automatons to possess excessive intelligence during manufacturing. The way I deciphered the anti-organic equation was to, invent a virus that spread slowly but was more potent than the anti-organic equation. March 7th's eyes widened. What? This is no longer strange. This is dangerous. Thank you, Miss Ino, for clarifying, Gongshu said more softly. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. This old man will tell you everything he knows. Oh, and if I may be so bold, Miss Ino, your role in quelling Fantilia's rebellion may be more significant than you realize. Why? Ino said. I did fight her, but it was General Jing Yuan who destroyed her physical body and left Fantilia grievously wounded. Without his and Dan Heng's timely support, I wouldn't have lasted long either. Ino knew she had been a dimension-crushing force in Belobog, but here in the Luofu, guarded by proper emissaries, she felt she shouldn't steal the spotlight. March 7th nodded in agreement. Gongshu Liang sighed deeply. General Jing Yuan is naturally wise and brave, but alas, this ties into how the 6 divine generals exercise their emissary authority. Since the Emperor Bao descended to the mortal realm, every Xianzhou, except for the marshal, has been granted emissary qualification, and that qualification is tied to the position of divine general. The Alliance, following divine will, has hunted the abundance for 5 millennia and has constantly battled their followers and the Annihilation Gang, suffering many brutal wars. 700 years ago, the Abundance emissary Shuohu led a large army to raid the Luofu, seeking the Ambrosial Arbor. The Cloud Knights of the Luofu were reduced to less than 1/10 of their strength, and over half the grotto heavens were destroyed. The Luofu's former general Teng Xiao sacrificed himself after the Shuohu War. 30 years ago, the Abundance Follower Coalition led by Bulirin awakened the living planet Jidu Shenlu, vitalized by Shuohu, triggering the Third Abundance Follower War. Yaoging's former general Yu gave her life in that battle. Ultimately, it was the manifestation of the hunt, the descent of divine arrows, that severely wounded the Abundance Follower Coalition and allowed the Alliance to overcome that calamity. If you're interested in the Third Abundance Follower War, you can ask General Jing Yuan or Diviner Fu for more details. And for mortals to cultivate from scratch into an emissary, who knows how many opportunities and how much effort that requires? This system, without doubt, ensures the inheritance of emissary qualifications. When Gongshu Liang mentioned the Third Abundance Follower War, a flash of sorrow and anger crossed his face. Ino and March 7th exchanged a glance, unsure how to respond. My apologies. I lost my composure. I shouldn't say more. Several craftsmen hurried over and whispered in Gongshu Liang's ear. His expression changed at once. It seems Master Gongshu has other matters to attend to. We won't keep him. March 7th and Ino left the Luofu craftsman's commission. Outside, March 7th shook her head in exasperation. That Fentilia is truly monstrous, stirring up trouble across the Luofu. As a Trailblaze member, I wanted to learn more about this place, anything, but everyone's so busy there's no time. Never mind, the memorial ceremony is about to begin. I'm heading to Star Watcher Avenue to join the crowd. Want to come? Ino shook her head. I want to wander alone. All right, be careful. No, even if the disciples of Sanctus Medicus were lurking in the shadows and attacked together, they wouldn't be a match for you, Ino. With Fantilia gone, you could walk the Luofu sideways. See you later. March 7th touched the space anchor outside the commission and vanished. Ino looked after her, then sighed in relief. Oh my, it seems Ino still prefers to spend time alone with me. And there are still so many questions I haven't finished asking since I woke up. For example, even if it's you, Alicia, controlling this body, you still can't fully master all the imaginary energy in it, can you? That's right. As I thought, the more I learn, the more terrifying the aeons seem. In the simulated universe, the data shows erudition. Being the most all-knowing aeon, new answers a genius would spend a lifetime chasing millions of years ago. Things it has set down are fixed. Even if the enigmata aeon fully came, they can't be changed. The imaginary energy I received the moment I touched Tav, its divine body back then, might, in theory, rival an emissary's, but I can't use it all. The emissaries of erudition don't seem to just blast opponents with imaginary energy, do they? After all, they're all geniuses. They always rely on their unique techniques, just like you, Ino. When facing a powerful enemy, the first thing you think of is erosion, right? So, I'm curious, Ino, how did you come up with erosion? Against erudition back then? Was it really just instinct? Yes, Alicia, you still don't know. The first thing I eroded after I was born was the Honkai will, and the moment I saw erudition, I felt something very similar to how I'd felt facing the Honkai will. Alicia burst into bright laughter that filled Ino's mind. This is information even I didn't expect. I didn't know you had such a cute side. Cute? Alicia's still subtle. Later, in the Elysian realm, I saw your memories and realized that the so-called Honkai god was just a Trojan horse program left by the old civilization. If not for the Honkai will and for your efforts in that previous age, Alicia, I wouldn't exist now. Alicia smiled, and as if reaching from behind, threaded her fingers through Ino's. In Ino's perception, Alicia was right behind her. For you to become who you are now, ultimately, it was because of you. Whatever was right or wrong, whatever the outcome, those were choices you made yourself. What you'll experience next depends on your future choices. Future choices. Ino stood at the space anchor and, after a moment's thought, still couldn't decide where to go. She chose to open a blind box, letting the anchor randomly pick her next destination. Earlier in Cloudford Prison, Jing Yuan had halted in front of a cramped cell while a team of Cloud Knights raised their weapons and formed a battle stance. He showed no sign of fear. Those who enter here are either jailers or prisoners. Which are you, honored guest? The golden-haired man across from him kept a composed, polite smile. Neither. I'm merely a lost traveler. What a spectacle! The Stellaron, the ambrosial arbor, the disciples of Sanctus Medicus, the Lord of Destruction, threats mounting one after another. I didn't expect an unexpected one as well. Mr. Luocha, what is in your coffin, and on whose commission are you transporting it? Luocha studied Jingyuan's face and, for the first time, saw a flicker of surprise before returning to his usual calm. As a merchant, I was entrusted to transport a token. I do not know the circumstances behind it. Jingyuan's voice tightened as he took 2 steps forward. Just a merchant? Mr. Luocha, you must be joking. Shall I recount your deeds in the Aegisborn and the traces you left in the Veil Nebula, or would you prefer I say that cumbersome title? The divine foresight general truly lives up to his reputation. Jingyuan continued to close the distance. After Miss Ino alerted me through her companion, I did my homework. Miss Ino, what did that genius deduce during her brief journey with you? She used her methods to see what was in your coffin. It's connected to the Swarm King, and it's only a part of it. Was her observation incorrect? At that, the Cloud Knights moved in and surrounded Luocha, weapons trained. He panicked for a moment, rifling through his memories until one image settled. The time he had explained Luofu funeral customs to Sushang and had felt Ino watching his coffin. Could it be that even then, her method really is terrifying? In such a short time, she guessed so accurately. Jingyuan's laugh was cold. His aura shifted as he invoked his Stonefire dream body. Surrender, and I might grant you a quick end, abomination of the abundance. Luocha spread his hands in a placating gesture. General, yes, my power traces back to the abundance, but like you, I am an enemy of the abundance. No sooner had he spoken than the temperature in the room dropped. The Cloud Knights finally noticed another figure nearby. Jingyuan's expression tightened into something more complicated. A low voice cut through the chill. Jingyuan, don't interfere. The revival of the ambrosial arbor is an omen. It means Xianzhou has reached a crossroads. The hunt, the abundance, the destruction. This is a game played by gods. If you don't side with the winners, you're a loser. This time, we must put the abundance to death. Chapter 80, Zhang Tianque. The scene shifted and Ino found herself in Changlitian. In front of a pavilion, 3 big boys had cornered a small girl on the steps, clapping and taunting her. Little blind girl, climb up on the platform. You can go up, but you can't get down. Tumble and roll. She can't get down. Heh, she can't get down. Humph, don't you know? Dan Shu's been captured. No one's coming to save you this time. Dan Shu? Ino stepped forward. The leader of the boys noticed her. Hey, outsider over there, what are you staring at? This ain't your business. Don't be nosy. Haven't beaten an outsider in days. He rolled up his sleeve as if preparing to show off. One of the other boys tugged his sleeve. Boss, that outsider, I think she's the one who can fight that. Lord of Destruction. The leader squinted at her. Really? My mom said disciples of Sanctus Medicus eat 3 or 4 kids a day. One half of the smallest boy chimed in. What? News said the Lord of Destruction is 10, even 100 times stronger than a disciple of Sanctus Medicus. So that means she eats 300 or 400 kids a day. And if this outsider can fight the Lord of Destruction, she must eat at least 100 kids a day. I get it. A wise man doesn't pick a fight with impossible odds. Retreat. Before Ino could figure out why they used the number of children eaten as a combat metric, the 3 boys bolted, gone in a flash. Big sister, thank you, the girl on the pavilion step said timidly. When Ino looked at her pupils, white and utterly empty of light, she realized the boys had meant what they said literally. Big sister, has Dan Shu really been captured? The girl asked. Yes. She's a disciple of Sanctus Medicus. She broke Xianzhou's laws. The girl said no more, only staring at Ino with those lightless eyes. Ino hesitated, then took the girl's hand. What's your name? Xiaoyu. She's, like Dan Shu, someone born with congenital defects. Their bodies are set from birth under the influence of abundance. Short-lived species might fix problems with surgery, but Xianzhou natives can't permanently reverse certain things. Whatever they try, the body will eventually revert. Isn't that one of abundance's side effects? Why would Dan Shu, someone born blind, join the disciples of Sanctus Medicus? I don't understand. Ino smiled faintly. There isn't absolutely no way to give Xiaoyu sight, if it's handled carefully. She had already done a quick assessment. In a normal eye, Light reflects off objects, passes through the cornea, lens, and vitreous, forming an image on the retina. Photoreceptor cells convert that light into neural signals which travel along the optic nerve to the visual cortex, and the brain recognizes the image. But Ino was different. As a virus occupying this body, she could use the host's senses and also read object data on contact and synthesize it in the brain. She didn't strictly need functioning eyes to build an image. Placing her other hand on a pillar of the Ruomu pavilion, she sent the pillar's information into Xiaoyu's brain through the virus. The jumbled signals gathered and formed an image directly in Xiaoyu's mind. "What did you see?" Ino asked. I, Xiaoyu stammered. Ino realized the problem. "That's it. Xiaoyu has been to Ruomu Pavilion before, but she's never seen that pillar. If you've never seen something, you wouldn't know what the shape in your head represents. Also, even though I controlled the toxicity so the virus in her body wouldn't harm her, her physiology is different from mine. She can't control the virus to analyze things herself. My ability was only a temporary measure." As Ino withdrew the virus, the image in Xiaoyu's mind vanished and the darkness returned. Xiaoyu's expression flickered between wonder and frustration. "Big sister, just now, I tried to use my technique to restore your sight, but it didn't fully work. What you saw was the pillar of Ruomu Pavilion." "Which one? The one closest to the vending machine. Will I be able to see more things in the future? I can't guarantee that." "Thank you, big sister." Xiaoyu's voice was small but grateful. "You're not disappointed?" Ino asked. "I am, but Dan Shu said she tried many methods and they all failed, so if I don't expect too much, I won't be too disappointed." Xiaoyu carefully walked down the steps. At the last one, she missed her footing and fell with a thud. Ino reflexively stepped forward, then stopped. Xiaoyu picked herself up immediately and kept going. To a Shanzhou native, minor bumps healed on their own before a healer could blink. At the vending machine, Xiaoyu fumbled for a moment, then operated it with practiced fingers. She stood on tiptoe, slipped in a straw, and with a clunk took a bottle of Scaled Gorge ice spring from the dispenser. She climbed the steps back up and placed the bottle in Ino's hand. Dan Shu said adults show thanks by giving gifts. "I don't have anything precious, so I'll give you water." Ino's mouth twitched. After a long beat, she took out her phone and dialed a number someone had told her would reach him when normal messages couldn't. Soon a cold, mechanical voice answered. "Hello, may I ask?" "Connect me to Screwlum."